Otter, thank you so much for the raid. Welcome, welcome. I am Shanala the Cerberus, 3 heads, 3 brain cells, and we're going to be doing a little bit of art today, or at least trying to. I am not an artist. I cannot draw. I'm just trying to redraw this Scooby-Doo picture as me and my friends. And let me get you a shout out. Is it gonna work?
This right here is my favorite thing ever.
Touch portal
in the history of forever. I think about this every day. I think about this all night long. I stay awake, not sleeping, because
How
I'm
was
thinking
your
about
stream?
this.
How was Hunt? That's a really cool model. Thank you, Kirby. Thank you. How y'all doing today? I woke up like a half hour late for my actual start time, because I was up till no, I went to bed. I laid down for a nap at like 10 a.m. and then I didn't wake up until 2:30. I think. So yeah. But oh, nope, wrong button. There we go. Oh, hang on. This needs to go up there. Okay. Am I sounding all right? Am I too quiet? Am I too loud? I added some gain to my mic because I tend to talk quietly, so I need to increase my volume. Sound utterly great, thank you. So let's see. First thing I need to do. Well, first let's put on what I plan for us to watch while I work. I pitch. Me and the music about the same at times. We're gonna be switching from music to this.
I've casually played disc golf for a few years, and what I've learned from all that experience is that I suck. But aren't sports 90% mental? So I decided to use my brain. Although you might think there's something wrong with my brain, because I made this. My goal has been to throw faster than any human. So we're going to see if we can break some records.
And before everyone accuses me of cheating,
You love this guy,
I want to
me
point out
too.
that this disc is regulation.
Said he doesn't make
It does have
more
this minor issue of
videos
so
or
much
like more
kick that
often,
it'll break your
but
arm.
all this stuff is so
And a
complex.
100-mile-per-hour frisbee going past your face.
I expect it
so
takes a
naturally,
while
we have
to
to see
build.
how bad it would be if you got hit. This ended up being my most labor-intensive project ever. Everything that could break, broke. I mean, heck, it broke twice. One of the main systems took me 10 generations to get working right. I even had to make my own valves.
Like a lot of my projects, the journey is the destination, so buckle up.
Disc golf is just like normal golf, played with discs. You play a series of holes where you try to get the discs into a basket with the minimum number of throws. You typically start with a long-distance drive to get close to the basket, and then you putt it in.
I enjoy making things go really, really fast, so I'm going to focus on the drive.
Okay,
And my goal is to make the disc go as
pen.
fast as humanly possible. Actually, faster than humanly possible. And according to the internet, the fastest disc ever thrown was 89.5 miles per hour by Simon Lazati.
Someone
So our
threw a
target is 90
frisbee
miles
at
per hour.
90
I've been
miles
wanting
an
to
hour.
make something like this for quite a while, and I have a vision of how I think it would work. Imagine a thing that you could hold that gave your arm an extra joint, and it was powered and could spin super fast on command. And then it had the ability to hold a frisbee on the end.
As you swung this thing, it would fire and give you a ton of extra speed. And then a computer monitoring the swing would release at just the right point.
all right.
The biggest problem with this design is the reaction forces. It is gonna kick like a mule.
When it accelerates the frisbee, there's an equal and opposite force that pushes into your arm. This could mess up your aiming or even injure you. Thanks a lot, Isaac Newton. But wait, if I launch 2 frisbees in opposite directions, they'll push on each other and it'll cancel out. So we just need an extra arm on our launcher, and we'll use a weight instead of a frisbee.
I need some kind of power source that I can use to accelerate this arm and launch the frisbee.
He's an
In the past,
engineer and
I've used
inventor,
explosive
so he
blanks
like
to
makes
launch
a lot
stuff
of his
really
own
fast,
parts
but I
for
don't think
things.
they're
Yeah.
suitable in this case.
He like makes
And that's
everything
because they're
himself.
just too fast. They release all their energy almost instantaneously. If I accelerated this
Did I
disc
see
as
William
fast as the
Osmond came
explosive
back?
blanks would want to,
I
it
don't
would
think
basically
I know who
break
William
everything.
Osmond is.
So my plan is to use really high pressure air. I can shoot this air into a piston, which will make a really strong pull. And then I can attach a chain to it to spin the arm. But that's only half the problem. We also have to stop the arm. You can't just have a hard stop because this will destroy everything. But there's a really cool trick. If we attach the chain to the sprocket, it will unwind as it launches the arm, and then it will wind the other way, which pulls the piston back out, acting like a brake.
I really like this design. There's no extra parts for me to make, break, and then remake, which is what usually happens with these systems.
Holding and releasing the disc is really hard. Humans are crazy, and we're not going to be making a hand. So I'm going to have the disc sit on a flat plane, held down by fingers around the rim. The fingers will have a trigger mechanism that will let me drop
Need
them
to
all in
lock
sync.
This
That's the basic design. 2 counter-rotating
Lock that.
arms, one
Okay.
holding a frisbee with little claws, powered by a high-pressure air system.
All right, let's get this thing made. Oh, crap. This hole's supposed to be over here. This part is too big to fail. If anyone asks, you didn't see anything. Everything is super beefy because the forces and torques are ridiculous. This thing has a lot of round parts, which means a lot of lathe work. You know what? Don't even ask. Cutting square-edged holes is sometimes a real challenge. This is the arm brace and will be formed into the shape of my arm. Hey, wife.
Yeah?
Could you see if we have a rod kind of similar size to my bicep?
Yeah, sure.
Very cool.
It's kind of
If you wanna
similar in
understand
terms
what the
of
heck some of
concept,
these
but
tools
William
are,
is
check
more
out my
comedy,
shop
less
floor.
technical. Question: Are your heads their own
I
personality,
3D printed
or
as
all
many
you,
parts as
all
I
me?
could, but the forces are so high that pretty much everything had to be metal.
Love this model as well. Thank you. Hello.
Once the parts are
Welcome
finally
in.
made, the assembly is pretty easy.
How you doing?
So
Libby
cool.
_airspinner says, don't you hate it when you put things in the wrong
So you
hole?
hold it with this
Can't
handle
be me.
and strap
Yeah,
it to
I
your
hate
arm.
it when I put
This
things
is the
in the
air
wrong
cylinder that
hole.
powers it, and this is the chain ring that it drives.
Uh,
and this gearbox
Takeshi,
rotates
thank
the
you for
arms in opposite
following. Welcome to the
directions.
hounds.
The frisbee sits here and is held in place by these fingers. The little air piston that releases the fingers is in here, and it pulls on these rods for a fast, synchronized release.
This whole thing is powered by a power pack, which you wear like a utility belt. So it's designed to be worn in the small of your back like this. Although if you're feeling chic, you could wear it on your side. And if you're feeling adventurous, you can wear it like a 90s fanny pack, but it just doesn't seem like a great place for a 3000 PSI air system.
Oh,
The power
my-
pack is simple.
Yeah.
There's the high-pressure air tank, a valve to control the airflow to the launcher, and a
Oh, you know
low-pressure
what?
side to drive the frisbee release.
My first instinct
I was
is to
wondering
strap
why
this
my
to arm and
tracking
give it a
wasn't
shot,
working.
But that is a really bad idea.
But it's because
For
I'm
one,
looking
running
at
this air cylinder
the
at 6
PNG
times its
of
rated
myself
pressure.
I
did
put
analyze its
into
strength, and it should be
CSP.
totally fine. But my bigger fear is actually the stuff that's spinning around. If something
Or
became
my
partially
reference.
detached, it could fling around and
So
whip
I'm
the snot out of me.
stupid.
We are going to test this
I'm a
really
stupid.
thoroughly before I strap it to my body. Whenever you test something like this for the first time, it's always really nerve-wracking.
But
Anything could
today
happen.
I'm gonna try and
So,
work
I'm in the
on
safest
this
spot in my
this
shop.
like
So here
Scooby-Doo
we go.
picture.
3,
I want
2,
to
1.
redraw it as my friends.
That was
so
about
I'm
30
gonna be
times slower than it should have
Daphne.
been, which is kind of funny, but also really annoying. Although I think I might know what the culprit is. I'm really suspicious of this gearbox. Everything feels really good in low friction
I'm going
right
to be
now.
Daphne.
But if you put a lot of torque through these
My
gears, they
friend
try to
Void
push each other
Taffy
apart.
is going
I think
to be
this is shoving them
Velma.
into the side of the gearbox and
My
generating
friend
a ton of
Jackie
friction.
is gonna be
So we're going to
Fred.
modify the gearbox to put these
Barry
bearings
the
between
Bugbear
the
is going to be
gears and the wall.
Scooby-Doo.
All right, hopefully it works this
And
time.
our other friend,
3,
Project
2,
Boof Demon, is
1.
going to be Shaggy.
Why?
All right, so I've been doing a lot of testing, and I think that this valve is part of the resistance. trying to undermine my disc launcher from within.
Did
The
you see
reason I
someone
used this
made
valve is
a
that someone on
IRL
Amazon said it
lightsaber?
worked for their
I
potato
think
can.
I
And
saw
thought,
that.
sounds great. I'm basically launching a potato too.
Yeah, cool
I don't
story,
remember
Mr.
where.
Potato Head, if that even is your real name.
I just did the math, which I should have done before, on the airflow that I can get through this valve, and there's not a chance that it'll work.
This valve is between the tank of high pressure air and the pneumatic cylinder. And the problem is that it has a tiny little hole, which only lets a little bit of air through, so the piston moves
Yeah,
really
get my
slow.
tail
Unfortunately,
out of
I
the way.
can't get a suitable valve quickly, and I want it right now, so we're gonna make our own valve.
We'll start with a giant hole that all the air can go through. Then we'll add a piston that can open and close the hole. Pressurizing this side will push the piston down.
You're
and
not
open
dumb
the
enough
valve.
to be Daphne?
We can
I'm
even
pretty
use our
dumb.
high pressure air to do this. We just need a small valve to turn this piston on and off, which is a perfect use for this valve that I thought was useless. And you know the drill, we just gotta make it now. This is the valve piston. It goes in like a glove. It really is pretty simple. I did integrate a safety stick, which prevents the valve
Guessing
from
you
opening
didn't sleep.
until I'm
I would.
definitely
I
ready.
I,
Let
I
me show you
laid
the
down at
difference
10
between these
a.m.
valves. Here's the old one.
and then
3,
I woke up
2,
at like 2:30.
Now I'm gonna show you what a real valve does. 2,
So only
1.
a half hour late.
It's just too much stress for the balloon to handle. The balloon is gone in 5,000ths of a second. Balloons are cool, but it would be really cool if it actually works.
3, 2,
Imagine
1.
being able to draw a circle.
Yeah. So slow.
Barry
It's starting
the
to get
Bugbear
pretty
just
annoying, actually.
resubscribed for
Come
4
on.
months.
Barry.
Not a problem.
Barry,
I'm
thank you
hesitant
for
to
the
say the problem
resubscription.
because
I
I've said that
appreciate
3
it so
times already.
much.
Basically,
How
we
you
have a
doing? How
bottleneck
was
and a
how was
bottleneck.
your
Let me
Jummy's
show you.
World?
Oh, come
Stream?
on.
Was
Hold
it a lot
on.
of
I don't
fun?
have the right tool. Okay, let me show you.
And this is the regulator.
The tank actually has a super duper high pressure inside of it, and the regulator allows it to output a constant lower pressure even as that pressure inside the tank changes.
Here's what's inside. It's a lot of interesting stuff, but the main takeaway is there's another tiny hole. Tiny holes are bad. All right, it's starting to get a little bit complicated, but we're gonna add a second tank that has no regulator.
The main tank pressurizes the secondary tank before we fire. The second tank has a big hull which can deliver all the air when we fire.
A lot of fun. What am I
All right,
watching?
let's try it
I'm
again.
watching a channel called Stuff Made
Ignore the
Here.
fact that it
He's an
didn't release,
engineer
that's
that
a
makes
software bug.
a lot of
The speed is
really
way
crazy,
better, but what is with this
overcomplicated
kick?
machines
Oh my goodness.
to do
I
things
know
like
what is
throw
happening.
frisbees or hit home runs
I think
or
it's stupid and smart as a continuum.
or
It's
make
stupid
basketball
over here,
hoops
smart over here,
that
and
you
everything in
can't
between. But
miss
what you
in.
might not realize is it's actually a circle, and it's possible to do something that you think is really smart, but you actually wrapped all the way back around to stupid, which is exactly what I did right here with this torque problem.
Looking at it from above, things are great. All the forces cancel out. But from this view, the top arm is pushing this way, and the bottom arm is pushing that way, which wants to twist the launcher, like a lot.
So I calculated how much torque this would put on your arm, and it's about the torque output of a
So
Honda
right
Civic.
now, I think he's trying to build
gonna
a
remove this
machine to
lower
throw
arm.
a
This
frisbee
will cut the torque in
at
half, although it does
90
mean we're gonna
miles
get the
per
kick
hour,
that I was
at
trying to
least.
cancel out. So to try to make that better, I'm going to make all the mass we're moving up here as light as possible.
because apparently the world
downside
record for a
is I
human
have to
throwing a
redesign and
frisbee
remake
is like
everything that
80,
moves.
85
it's not
miles an
great.
hour, 89 miles an hour.
CNC is the best. I call it the finger flinger. The idea is that the disc sits on a little finger at the end of the arm. As the arm rotates, the disc will swing out. And when it's at the right point, you can drop the finger to let the disc fly. The real finger looks like this and is held in place with a metal wire. The wire is held and released by a mechanical trigger at the base of the arm.
Including the counterweight, this weighs 20 times less than what we had before, which should really reduce the kick and the torque. One little tricky thing is that before it starts swinging, the disc can just flop and fall anywhere. So there's a little plastic clip that holds it in place before it starts moving, and then it can just swing away freely.
It's cool and all, but does it work?
3, 2, 1.
Hopefully that was a fluke. It can throw all right sometimes, but if there's any wobble, it just pops out. Slight redesign. Hopefully this holder will keep it stable. All right, let's try it. I think I somehow managed to make it worse. This is the super duper holder, which super duper supports the disc.
3, 2, 1.
Oh, I got it wrong. It's the super duper waste
Maybe
of
I should
time.
do the eyes first.
I just don't see any way of making the disc stand here without making this too heavy. I'm gonna go back to the original holder and try to make it really light.
Any mask that can't tell me what it would say it does here is gone. Everything is skeletonized, lighter fasteners, and I modified it to use the finger trigger because it's a lot lighter.
So before I sink any more time into this, I want to actually test it with me holding it. I'm going to do it at an extremely low power. This will let me test the whole system. It'll also let me test the throwing modes. So up until now, I've been using bench mode, which if I hold this button for 2 seconds, it'll trigger it. But it also has throwing mode. There's an accelerometer and gyroscope on the launcher that monitors the tilt and rotation of it. When it reaches a certain point in the throwing motion, it will trigger it to fire the frisbee.
Time to just go for it.
Wow.
How's everyone doing today?
3, 2, 1.
You got any plans for the rest of the weekend?
It seems like the disc isn't releasing at the right point. Oh.
You know, I think that assessment might have some merit.
Something somewhere is broken, and I don't know what it is. So I'm going to stop.
Depending
before I
on
hurt
what to have
myself
for dinner, I have
and
no
try
idea
to
what I'm
figure out
going to
what the
have
heck is
for
going
dinner
on.
today.
You solve one problem, you create another. The discs are jamming.
Oh my gosh.
Now that we're going really fast, I think the extreme acceleration forces are jamming the triggers so they don't
Let's
open.
merge
Which
those
means
two
that we get to
layers.
redesign and remake the triggers. I think you know the drill at this point. Okay, this should be practically unjammable.
Can you all hear the video okay? And
right,
am I
10%
sounding
power,
any
here we
louder
go.
than usual? I added a little bit
All right,
of
that looks
gain
great.
to my mic
25%.
since I tend to talk pretty quietly.
So it kind of looks like the disc is catching air under it and getting forced out.
I love how we now have the opposite problem of jamming. I'm making a quick and dirty air shield to see if I can improve the situation. This should block air from flowing under the front of the disc. All right, 25%. Promising. How about 50? Nice. I think this actually works. 75%. We're going for it. 2, 1. The disc popped out immediately.
A lot of stuff just happened. We broke the carbon fiber tube, which I don't think is that big of a mystery. The disc popping out early is just really, really bad.
Normally, most of the energy goes into the disc, and when it's released, it takes it away. But when the disc pops out early, all that energy goes into the arm, which makes it go super fast, and then slam into the stop system with gusto.
You could say it turns the brake system into
oh,
the brake
Lake,
system.
do you
We're
have
gonna replace the
a?
tube with titanium, which doesn't shatter.
You have a lot of
Now
models.
the real mystery is
do
why
you,
the disc is
do you have
popping
a
out almost
preference on like
immediately.
which one I use? Please say a simple one. One of the more simple ones.
I don't think this is aerodynamics this time because it's happening almost immediately before it starts going fast. I think this is actually G-forces.
The disc is going from 0 to 60 in a few thousandths of a second. This pushes the disc into the arm with over 100 pounds of force.
I think it's pushing the disc so hard that it bends like this, which lets it pop out of the fingers.
The acceleration begins immediately, which is why the disc would fly out when it's not even going fast.
So my thought is, if there's no gap to squeeze through, then it can't squeeze through.
Let's put that shower thought to a test.
This fully supports the back edge of the Frisbee, which will hopefully keep it from popping out. I'm using one of the trigger fingers to keep the disc in. Then when we're ready to fire, we can open the trigger finger and the disc should roll out of this holder.
I'm so tired of making grippers. Please work.
3, 2, 1.
Yeah, that's definitely gonna be a no for me, dog.
I'm really tempted to make a custom solid metal disc which can't bend, but that would be deadly.
It's an old
and also not
meme.
regulation. I think the answer is to pull on the disc from the front. This will want to stretch the disc out rather than compressing it, and it shouldn't bend. So that means we get to redesign and remake the disc holder for, I don't even know, the 100,000 millionth time.
Before I sink a ton of time into making a nice gripper, I want to confirm that pulling on the disc actually works. This simple prototype holds under the rim, but it doesn't release. All right, 75% power, here we go. I think this concept works. Also, I was wrong about this one not releasing the disc. Trying to stop the frisbee broke it. I couldn't have hit more things if I tried, but as far as I'm concerned, that is the sound of victory. I think. We just have to make it for real and find out. It's 95% carbon fiber because I need maximum strength and minimum weight. It's basically the same way you make a drone.
Carbon fiber, titanium, aerospace grade aluminum, all to throw a piece of plastic. You'd think we're trying to go to the moon here. This is just like the prototype, except there's a little trap door holding the disc in place.
If this doesn't work, I give up.
3, 2, 1. Finally, it works. This has been such a slog. This is the most time I've put into any project.
And a lot happened, so let me summarize. We made the original design, which had bearing issues. Then we had a series of pneumatic bottlenecks and made our own high flow valve. We realized the launcher would twist your arm off. Then we wasted time trying to make a finger flinger with 3 generations of stabilizers. We backtracked and made the super light gripper, which wouldn't let go. So we developed a new trigger finger. Then as we started to go faster, we ran into aerodynamic issues with the holder and had to make a windshield. Then as we accelerated even harder, the 3-finger holder couldn't handle the G-forces. So we went off on a tangent trying to make a wraparound holder, which didn't work. So then we made a prototype pulling on the frisbee holder, which worked. I made another wooden prototype, which I didn't show because it was boring. And then we made a space-age certified carbon fiber prosthetic hand.
And all I want to know now is, can it throw faster than a human? Because if it can't, that would be really, really disappointing.
Remember, the speed to beat, 89.5 miles per hour.
I've got a setup that we're going to use to measure the speed with the high-speed camera. But before we do that, I'm going to throw the disc so that we get a human baseline. I already know that I suck, so you don't have to tell me that.
All right, it's the robot's
The
turn.
eye speed
3,
lower
2,
and bigger.
1.
I feel like I need to make the eyes bigger.
$85 miles per hour at 40% power. That is what I'm talking about.
All right, let's step it up.
3, 2, 1.
Wow, that's it.
Could we do 100 miles per hour? I bet we could. Max power in 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
That obviously wasn't supposed to happen that way. It looks like the centrifugal force was so high that it pulled the gripper off the titanium rod. I have the clamps maxed out, so to fix this would take some new parts. Since we're already exceeding 90 miles per hour, let's just call 75% 100%. I grabbed some dimensions off this still frame before impact, and I calculate that the disc is going about 115 miles per hour, but it is a weird perspective, so take that with a big grain of salt.
Actually, you know what? Let's delete.
I think it's a really bad idea to hold this launcher. The disc can come off, and when it does, it's deadly. And on top of that, there's
Blah, 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 blah. Boring. We've demonstrated that it's fine at lower power, so let's do it. But we are not going over 15% power. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Yeah, it's probably a good time to end it. I forgot to aim. This thing is amazing. I love this. It's fast, but how far can it go? I really don't want to take it to a park. This is the kind of thing that generates interest that you don't really want. So thankfully, we have a family friend with a really long field. I bet it's going to go so far.
3, 2, 1. Directly into the manure.
All right, let's try again.
3, 2, 1.
Do a barrel roll. Do a barrel roll.
My very shallow understanding is that discs flipping over is a fundamental behavior. How much discs want to do this is so important. It's actually one of the ratings for the discs. I'm using discs that don't want to flip over, but they're not designed for the speeds that I'm going, and they're still wanting to flip.
I tested all the discs in all the configurations. Some are all right, some are terrible.
I'm getting about 550 feet, which is less than half of the human distance record, which really highlights how insane that record is. So you'd think if I'm throwing it faster than any human, it would go further than any human can throw, but it's actually really complicated. Discs are basically wings and gyroscopes.
How much the disc wants to flip and how efficiently it flies is extremely dependent on the design.
I think if I want to come anywhere near the distance record, I'm probably going to have to design my own disc for the speeds that I'm throwing at. And I also think I'm going to need a lot more spin. When the disc spins, it stabilizes itself from tipping just like a gyroscope. And I think I'll also need a really strong tailwind.
You know what? Hold on. Oh, that's really close. But I'm not a woman.
So I brought the wife out to press the button, in which case I think it counts because she's a woman.
Who could argue with that?
Who could argue with that?
All right, here we go.
3, 2, 1.
Okay, not the strongest start. Let's try again.
3, 2, 1. Whoa. That was a good one.
You can see how far it went. 167 meters, approximately.
What was the record again? You know, I think that might be for the best.
I can't put my finger on it, but something about this just doesn't really feel quite legit.
I do think it would help if I was holding it.
Do you want to hold it?
No.
So this thing will let you throw a frisbee faster than any human, but a sacrifice must be made. It'll either break your arm or possibly kill you. Not exactly the most useful thing ever, but I think it's a good proof of concept. I learned a ton, and I have a lot of ideas on how I can make it safe, and how I could launch the frisbee really far, which I think is a super interesting problem. And I know this thing is powerful, but I want to get a better visual. So we're going to shoot it at some melons just to see what happens. But before we do that, I want to talk about getting these videos made. So I just spent 8 weeks designing and building and testing this thing.
And I still can't believe that's my life. It is so fun, and I'm so thankful to be in this position.
Projects like this have zero commercial potential, so my ability to make them is totally dependent on your help. So if you want to help me make more projects like this, there's a few things that you can do. The first thing you can do is subscribe to the channel. This helps me get sponsors.
You can support the projects directly on Patreon or by picking up a sweet shirt.
And the final thing you can do is take a minute to check out this video sponsor. I get messages every single day from people who want to learn to make stuff like I do. And the simple answer is that you learn a specific set of skills, which you apply to solve various problems. But picking up that set of skills is the hard part. And it's why I think the sponsor for this video is really important. It's a company that I've wanted to work with for over a year, and they're called Brilliant. I love tools, and this is an amazing tool for learning. What they do is they take a subject like linear algebra, and they present it in an interactive and hands-on way. So you're solving real problems, you're seeing the results, and it's a really effective way to learn. And linear algebra may seem esoteric, but I use it all the time. I found that if I spend a little bit of time learning every day, it's just insane how much progress I end up making in 6 months. It's kind of like working out, except for your brain. Brilliant is really good for this because they take these big meaty topics where you don't even know where to begin, and they divide it up into little chunks that you can do one every day, and before you know it, you know a bunch of new cool stuff. Right now I'm trying to improve my statistics game, I'm working through all the statistics lessons, is kind of inspiring me to try to beat the house. We'll see. So if you want to level up your skills and become more capable as a human, check out Brilliant. All you have to do is go to brilliant.org/stuffmadehere to sign up for free, and the first 200 people will get 20% off their annual premium membership. Learning and applying knowledge is definitely one of life's great joys, so I hope you check it out, and that's it. Thank you, Brilliant, for sponsoring this video, and thank you for listening.
Time to find out what would happen if you had an exceptionally soft head and got hit by this.
3, 2, 1. Anyone want some cantaloupe? Fresh cut. Woo!
That seemed like a good one.
I know most people are stronger than a melon, but man, I would not want to get hit by this. That's all I've got until V2, assuming I make it. I hope you enjoyed this project and maybe you learned something. If you feel the urge to get out there and make something or learn something, I would recommend acting on it. It's a source of great joy.
This 50-foot wall would look a lot better with a giant painting on it. But painting the wall is a lot of work, so instead of spending a couple days doing that, let's spend a month building a robot to paint this wall and as many walls as we want for us. I only need to paint 15 50-foot walls to break even. So what I want is a robot that will take any random photo and paint it on the wall for me. This is one of those things that's easy to say, not easy to do. For one, I'm gonna have to make a gigantic wall-sized robot. On top of that, making a robot paint is challenging.
What is this?
It's your face.
It's your face.
My biggest challenge with this project is deciding what to paint on the wall.
But I have an idea. I have a tradition of pranking my wife.
Oh.
These pranks often get me a really excellent glare. How stupid but also awesome would it be to have a 20-foot glare painted on the wall? And if I'm lucky, she might even reward me with a glare for the glare.
So before we get into being artists, I should address the elephant in the room, which is that last time you saw me, I most definitely didn't have giant walls to paint murals on. We moved across the state so that we could be closer to family. And if you're wondering, it was extremely painful to pull all of those tools out of my basement.
Although I did have some help.
Hey, it's me, Destin.
So that's how I came to have these giant walls. I just need a graffiti bot. And I also need a better name. We're gonna call it Janksy.
Okay, here's my plan for Janksy. I'm going to start with a robot that can move anywhere on the wall, kind of like a Roomba. It will have some kind of fancy paint applicator that can put any color at any point on the wall. And then I'll write some code that takes whatever picture I want and it'll convert it into a series of instructions to the robot. Move here, paint here, and so on. It'll run for a long time, and with some luck, we'll get a thing that looks like our picture.
The thing that's really stressing me out about this project is that I really only have one wall to paint. If I screw it up, I'm going to be in for a world of pain. So this thing has to work.
The most obvious way to make this robot work would be to do what humans do when they paint, which is to mix a range of colors to make new colors that you apply artistically with a paintbrush.
There is not a chance I'm going to make a robot that works this way. Trying to mix colors is possible, but completely impractical. So what I'm going to do is exploit a quirk in the way that your eyes see, which will allow me to completely skip over all of this color mixing business, but it's going to take a bit of explaining.
Your eyes work by focusing light onto a grid of nerve cells, which can detect the amount of light that's hitting them. So something over here might project onto these nerve cells, which your brain would interpret as something with that shape at that location. You can also see a spectrum of color, but what's interesting about the eye is that it can't actually really see color. Let me explain. So if light comes in your eye that's anywhere between reddish and bluish, some of these nerve cells will say that they see light. They don't know what color it is, they just see something. Other nerve cells will say they see light that's orangish to tealish. Again, they don't know what color it is, they just see something. And then other cells will say they see light if it's between greenish and violet. Your brain deduces what color it thinks it's seeing from the relative proportions of light that these cells report. If I saw something red, it would mostly be the red nerve cells. Your brain says that's red. If I see something yellow, it's sort of 50-50 between these nerve cells, and your brain says that's yellow. And this is where the literal life hack we're going to use comes in. If I make a grid of red and green squares and then I scale them down to the point that your eye can't distinguish the individual squares, the nerve cells will just be seeing that there's some red light and some green light, and your brain's like, it's yellow. Final answer. You can trick your brain into seeing almost any color with only red, green, and blue light.
This is actually how computer monitors work. There's little red, green, and blue lights that they're turning on and off to make whatever color it wants. The dots being red, green, and blue is not random. It's based on how your eye works.
So we should be able to do the same thing and trick your brain into seeing colors that don't exist by painting various combinations of a small set of colors. We'll also eliminate paintbrushes by only painting dots. This makes the robot approximately 1 million times simpler.
There is one little problem though, which is your eyes see light, but we're painting with paint. When you mix red, green, and blue light, your eye interprets that as the color white. But if I mix red, green, and blue paint, it's definitely not white. Red paint looks red because it absorbs all the light that isn't red. Same for blue, same for green. You mix them all together, they absorb all the light and it's black. Paint basically works the opposite way of light.
So what we'll do is we'll start with white surface. If we want white, we'll paint nothing. And then we'll mix the paints to get whatever color we want. And instead of red, green, and blue, we're going to use the colors cyan, magenta, and yellow.
This will let us make more colors than we could with red, green, and blue. So when I mixed the red, green, and blue, I should have gotten black, but I actually got brown. And this is pretty typical in reality. It's very sensitive to the shades of color.
So instead of trying to mix black, we're going to use black paint.
You may have heard of CMYK. That stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. I don't know why black is
did my
K.
mic mute? I
Maybe
did
it's
not
same
hit
guy that
the
named
mute
potassium on the
mic
periodic
button.
table. So that's the theory.
It just
It's been
muted
done
on
a
its
billion
own.
times. It definitely works, but I do need a way to
And
lay
death
down all
didn't
these
work.
dots.
Why did death not
And the
work?
right way to do
Touch
this would be
portal.
with some kind of high performance, super fast head that can lay down millions of dots per second. But this is the kind of problem that entire companies spend decades trying to solve. So I'm going to kind of go the other way and just do a thing that can do one dot at a time. One dot at a time does have one fatal
Why do you
flaw,
work
though,
and then
which
you
is it's
don't
gonna
work
be
touch
really,
portal? Why?
really slow. A typical inkjet printer
Does
prints
this work?
1,000 dots per linear inch,
That works.
which means 1 square inch of paper has 1,000,000 dots. If I try to
Does-
print at that resolution on my wall, that would be about
Is that-
100 billion dots. We're looking at like 65,000 years
That
to print the
works.
wall. So that's a definite no-go. So I worked
The
the numbers
shutout
a bit more, and I
worked.
think the best I can do is about 1 dot per inch. This would correspond to maybe about a week of printing. And 1 dot per inch is definitely not as good as 1,000,000 dots per inch, but if you stand far
Why?
enough
Why
away,
death not work? Do I
you should
have
get
it
the same
named the
effect.
wrong
So
thing?
remember,
in touch
kids,
portal,
if at
maybe?
first you don't succeed, reduce your expectations till you get to the point that you're a success. So now the trick is deciding what way I'm going to actually apply the paint. I looked at a bunch of different ways of
see.
doing this. None of these things
No,
seem
it's
like they
set
could be
up
reliable
right.
enough. So what I went for is a paint spray gun. When you spray these, they make a cone of paint. So I should be able to change the spot size that I paint by how far it is from the wall. This should be able to make the dots. But I
That's
still
me
need a way to move it
activating
anywhere
it.
on the wall, which is definitely easier said
Oh,
than
I
done
forgot
because
to,
the wall is freaking huge.
Imagine that I make a giant gantry that
I
can move
forgot
this
to
paint
set
head
up tits.
anywhere on the wall. Because it's so big, it's going to be flexible. If I tried to quickly move this from one point to another, it's going to
Does
vibrate.
pet work?
But I need this thing to move as fast as possible because I need
Pet
to make
doesn't
a
work.
ton of
Why
dots.
doesn't pet
I
work?
could reduce the vibration by making it really stiff, but this would make it super heavy, which would mean huge motors. So I'm going to do something a bit unusual. I'm going to make a big gantry that can move anywhere on the wall that's slow, inaccurate, and cheap. And then hanging from this gantry is going to be another gantry that's light and fast. The big gantry will move the little gantry to a desired location on the wall,
Okay,
and then the
there's-
little gantry
there's
will go to
tits at
town and
least.
paint all the area that it overlaps. Because it's small and light, I can move it quickly without the risk of huge vibrations. If you repeat this over and over again, you can paint the whole wall.
I think that's a plan. We just needed to design it and build it.
My tits work.
Building this took pretty much
Alright,
every
let's
tool that I
restart
have.
touch portal.
There's a decent amount of machined parts on the CNC and the manual mill. We've got some laser cutting and 3D printing. All the parts on this are
I wonder if I
selective
ran
laser
touch
sintered.
portal as
There's a lot of big
admin,
parts
it
on this,
would.
and I made a
It
bunch of
wouldn't
those on the CNC
like stop
router because
responding
wood
as
is cheap.
often.
I love how easy wood is to cut.
Alright,
compared
let's
to
try this
steel.
again.
We've also got a number of plasma cut
There,
and
now it
sheet metal
works.
parts.
Okay.
This is also a fast, cheap way to make big things. And a few hacks. This is the little gantry that's moved around by the big gantry. The paint gun mounts here, and it has its trigger pulled with this little servo
Well,
motor.
these kind of
So the gantry
like...
rides into these steel tracks where it goes left and right across the wall.
It does
Come
this
up,
with 50 feet of wooden gear racks and a
The
little
rings
pinion gear
around
that
the
I made.
horn
These
are
barn door
hard.
tracks are extremely awkward to hang, but thankfully the warehouse allows me to have more power. There's 4 of them and they need to line up perfectly so the cart doesn't get hung up. I knew that the probability of me mounting these 20 feet up the wall and them lining up was 0, which is why I made these necessarily complicated rail mounts. I mount these on the wall in mostly the right spot, and then I can use this screw to adjust the alignment of the rails and then lock them in place with these bolts.
The little gantry hangs from these 2 steel cables. It raises and lowers it by turning these spools. The way that you would normally do this is have a rail at the top and the bottom, and then some kind of rigid structure in between them. Only having to make this little wooden cart and hang some steel cables from it is infinitely easier. It does have a big problem,
Hydrate
though,
and
which is
stretch?
Newton's third
Alright.
law.
When I accelerate the paint gun to the right, it pushes the gantry to the left. And since it's hanging from cables, I made a
What,
very nice
what
swing
should I
set.
have for dinner?
Fortunately, I have
I
another
kinda
trick up my
don't
sleeve. If I were to mount a
wanna
second print head on this gantry and
spend
accelerate it in the
more
opposite
money?
direction of the main print head,
I
they
kind
would
of
push
don't
in
want to
opposite
order in
directions, which
again
would cancel
and
each
spend
other
more
out, and the
money, but at
gantry
the same
shouldn't
time,
swing.
I also
I really don't want to
really
actually
feel like
move a
having
second
anything I
spray
have in
head
the
in the
house.
opposite direction, but all that matters is that you move something with the same mass in the opposite direction. So that's what these steel bars are for. The gantry is built so that I can attach these to it and it'll move them in the opposite direction.
And now it's steady. For some reason, I just love this trick.
So the gantry doesn't do a fancy dance when it's moving around anymore, but this still can't work. And that's because there's a lot of play and friction in the big gantry
What's he
that
doing?
moves this
He's-
little gantry
he's making
around.
a
It
robot?
can easily be an inch or 2 over from where I think
he's
it
making
is,
a
and
robot
that
to
will never
paint-
work.
to
Instead
paint
of trying
a
to make
picture
all
on
the
the
mechanics
wall.
really accurate, which is really hard, I'm gonna just avoid that problem by measuring where the spray head actually is. If it's in the wrong spot, then I'll correct for it using software. So I'm using 8 of these motion tracking cameras. They're made by a company called OptiTrack.
They tell me exactly where these reflective balls attached to the gantry are.
All I have to do now is roughly position this gantry, and I can correct for any error. So if I push this over
should
here,
be
the
pointed-
gantry just
Well, if
goes
these
to the right
are,
spot. It doesn't really matter where
if
this
the horns are
is.
like
And then if
pointed
the motor's stalled
backwards,
and it can't actually reach the spot it needs to paint, then
maybe this should be
it knows how to ask for help.
more like that.
So all this together, we have a paint sprayer that we can move anywhere on the wall and fire at will. Although before we can desecrate this wall, there's quite a bit of software that we need. Our goal is to take an image and convert it into a set of cyan, magenta, yellow, and black paint locations that, when added together, look like our image. So we start with a photo. A photo on the computer is divided into little regions called pixels, and each pixel contains how much red, green, and blue light would trick your eye into seeing whatever color is at that pixel. We can separate the image into 3 black and white images that correspond to how much red, green, and blue there is in the image. And then there's a standard way to convert this red, green, and blue
That
data
looks
to
alright,
CMYK.
but it's
This is already pretty close to what we need to
it's
send to the robot.
taking up
I
too
can't
much
paint the pixels
space here.
directly
I'm not gonna have
because a dot
space
from
to
the
put
robot
like
is
the
bigger than a
other
single
side
pixel.
of the thing.
I'm planning to
here.
paint a uniform grid of dots. So conceptually, what I want to do is divide the image into a grid according to my biggest dot. And then for each grid cell, I'll figure out what size dot would best represent the pixels within that cell. Bright pixels would
So
get a
maybe
full-size
putting it
dot,
right
and dim
there would
pixels
be
would get
better.
no dot. How I actually do this is a bit complicated to explain, so hold on to your butts. We'll start by looking at one of the pixels in the image that we want to dotify. I look at the area around the pixel that corresponds to the biggest dot that I would paint. I get the average color in that area, and then I save that average color in the corresponding location in a new image. I do this for every pixel in the image. The new picture is the key to everything. It's also very blurry. In fact, this is how most blurring algorithms work. The technical term for this is called a convolution. Every pixel in the blurry image is telling me what the average color would be if I were to put a grid cell at that location in the original image. In other words, if you want to put a dot here, this is the color that it should look like to best capture the appearance of all the pixels that the dot replaces. To get all the dots we need to paint, we sample a grid of points on our blurry image.
I
and
hope
for each
Blake is
point, we
proud
make
of
the
me
dot
using
size
layers.
proportional to the amount of color in each pixel, and this gives us what we want. The last little complexity is that the grid of spots for each color is made at a different angle. And this is because when you have overlapping, repeating patterns, very strange stuff happens. And that's it. If we paint these dots, we should get our image. I think it looks
You
really cool at
are.
low resolution. Especially
Hooray.
up close. This is what the wall should look like when you're by it.
So everything that I'm describing here is called halftoning. I definitely didn't invent it. It's been used for a really long time, and I'm barely scratching the surface of it here.
Once I computed the dots, it should have been a simple matter of converting it into moves for the gantries, But this wall has an unremovable fire alarm right in the middle of it. The amount of time I've spent to ensure that the robot doesn't try to paint the fire alarm or crash into it, it is way too high.
All right, so I decided to go full pro and I got real CMYK inks. Oh, man, these smell awful. And this robot's gonna take a week to print. There's no way I can be aerosolizing this for a week. I'll die. I'm gonna go find some less awful paint. That was a fail. So after the ink fail, I decided to go
No,
with
that's not
acrylics.
right.
These are water soluble instead of some nasty solvent.
Well,
I can also
actually-
clean them up with water if or when I make a really big mess. But I still can't just put this paint
Actually
in the
should be
gun and
bigger
expect
too
it
if
to work.
I'm
There is
trying
a
to
bunch
follow
of variables that affect
along
what
with,
size and quality
Daphne's
of
head.
spot the spray gun is going to make.
should actually
And
be
I don't understand
higher
that.
up.
So we have to work our way through
My
all of
head
that
needs to
before
be
we can
bigger.
go to town on the wall.
I need to
I
make my
developed
head
a series
bigger,
of tests that
which
allow
is
me
fine.
to
I
see
can
how
just
each of
select
these
everything
variables
and
affect the
scale
final
it
result,
up.
so I can figure out how I should be controlling the spray gun.
Getting the spray head dialed in
But the
is
horn
a
should
little bit
start
finicky,
higher up
but
on the
I think
head
I have
anyway.
a calibration that works, so let's make some art.
Well,
Before we go
since
ruin
the
the wall, I'm
you're-
doing
this
some
horn
small
is like
paintings
going to
to
be
make sure
seen
everything works.
from
And to keep things simple, this
from
first
like
one
a
is just
side
monochrome.
angle.
So with the help of the reference picture, I can see the resemblance.
I would actually
guess.
just
But
have
there is one little
the
problem,
ball
though.
part
That's
on
an easy
top,
fix,
and then
but
it wraps
is
around
one
like
of many
this.
problems.
I'm stuck
Because
in
right
that
now it
infinite
looks
loop
like
where
this
it
is the
kinda
top
works,
of
but
the
it
horn.
doesn't.
That's not
And you
what
fix
it
something and
is.
it gets a little better, but then you fix something else.
We
and it
gotta
gets worse.
redo
It
this.
just goes on and on and on. Eventually it should work, but I think we're gonna be here for a little while. This one's looking great. You just need some rose-colored glasses.
That was actually close. The paint sprayer is just spraying way too much paint.
It'd actually
do
just
another
be
day of
like this,
calibration.
really.
And now, as they say, we're painting
And
with
then
fire.
The balls
This
up
is way
there.
better than the red-faced "Just Kill Me" wife. It's so cool how up close it looks like nothing, but then as you pull back, the face emerges.
I've been working on the art, and I think I figured it out.
It is some real high society stuff. It starts with a two-tone stamp of my wife's face. It progresses to a gray scale. And then finally, color. The BS art justification for this is that it shows the evolution of the machine from this coarse and unrefined stamp to
Burger
full
sounds
color.
good.
It just is the story of the machine learning to paint with color. The real explanation for this is that the robot can probably do this. I don't know if it can do this. I felt like this needed a little bit more. Got some diagonal stripes for visual interest. And then I was thinking, well, you know, what is she glaring at? So I added some laser eyes.
What's
to
a
really drive
Mexican
home that
Coke?
powerful gaze. If this isn't art, I don't know what is.
I had a hard time sleeping last night because I really don't want to ruin this wall, but I just have to go for it. So here goes nothing. Running it for multiple days straight, I ran into some entirely new issues. Felt like repairing a car while driving it down the highway.
I've never heard the term Mexican Coke before. Oh, a glass bottle Coke from Mexico with real sugar? Ooh. Sounds good.
What is art anyway? Is this art? This has to be art. If this isn't art, then I have no recourse, but I'll be very upset.
This is like actually art. You get up close and you can see all these dots, but then you back up and back up and back up, and you see color and a face. Remember all that
It's
stuff
really
about not
cool.
hitting the fire alarm? Yeah, we're not even gonna go there.
There's also some variation in the brightness of the color, but now that I'm thinking about it,
I realized that I actually meant to have these imperfections all along. They give it character. This
Yeah,
is
me
just
too, me
the
too.
best.
I meant to have these
So
imperfections.
I haven't shown my wife what I'm painting. I've kept her completely in the dark, and it's time to see what she thinks about all this. Hopefully she thinks it's amazing, but I can see why having your face 20 feet tall on a wall might be a little weird, maybe. My wife just got here. She hasn't seen anything that I'm doing, and I am super excited to see what she makes of this work of art, I guess, that the robot has made. She's been waiting here for me. Are you ready to see some art?
I'm ready to rumble.
What do you think of my art?
Oh my gosh. It looks like I'm ready to be on a dollar bill.
Oh yeah, you do look like a dollar bill.
I look very patriotic.
Miss America?
No, fallen soldier. Tribute. These are squished spiders. These are obliterated spiders.
Do you like my art?
I do. Oh, this should have been right in my eye. Missed opportunity.
So on a scale of 1 to $1 billion, how much would you pay for my art?
Well, that assumes I want it. I don't know, $1,000?
I should have made that scale narrower. That's like a 0.1 out of 10. It's big though, therefore it's worth more. That's how it works.
Oh, right, I forgot that. Better luck next time.
In the process of making this art, I made some other art, and I'm really curious to see what you make of that as well. I promise we're gonna get back to my wife and what she thought about those portraits in just a second. Before we do that, I want to do something which I don't really want to do because it makes me uncomfortable, which is ask you for your help. These videos take
Oh my god,
a
I
lot
hate
to
the
produce.
paint
I
bucket
put
and
all of the
CSP
time,
so much.
all the resources, anything I can do to make these videos as good as I possibly can. And I do that because I love making them and I hope that they're useful. And although I love making these videos, your support is what makes them possible. So if you want to help me make more of these videos, there's a few things that you can do.
Oh,
the first thing you can do is support these projects directly on Patreon. You can also
I
subscribe
hate
to the
the
channel.
CSP
The more
paint
interest there
bucket.
is in the channel, the easier it
It
is to get
sucks.
sponsorships, which then fund the videos.
No.
And then the final thing you can do is take just a minute to check out the video sponsor. In this case, it is one of my most favorite sponsors of all time, KiwiCo. What KiwiCo does is they send you a crate every month that has everything that you need to do some kind of project. This is actually
I
a
mess
lot.
with the settings
And
all
I've
the
been wanting this one
time
for a
and it
while. I'm pretty
never,
excited
never
about it.
does good.
The reason that I love these so much is that I was raised building kits just like these. I know the impact that they have on a kid. It's huge. This is one of the more complicated projects, but they have things for all ages. We've been giving our daughter KiwiCo crates since she was 6 months old, and you might have noticed that my wife is a little bit pregnant, and we're gonna be doing exactly the same thing for baby number 2. If you didn't already know, my wife is the best. All the glaring and everything, that's just us messing around.
So anyway, I've made multiple locks from scratch, and this crate is incredible. You make a fully functioning lock from parts.
This is such a good project. So if there's anyone that you know that you want to give a really good, really useful gift to this year, go to kiwico.com/stuffmadehere. You'll get 50% off your first crate from any of the lines, and that's it. Thank you, KiwiCo, for sponsoring this video, and thank you for listening to the sponsorship.
All right, we've got some bonus art. Here is the first one that it made.
Is this thing on?
Yeah.
I like it.
When you have a software bug that never turns the sprayer off.
Is this thing on? It looks like I'm so enraged.
It almost looks like you're asleep, or you're dead. So what did you think you were looking at before I told you that it was you?
It looks like a flaming hot Cheeto with eyes. This one though looks like Pac-Man. It's a conversation starter. That's what art really is, right?
What is this? Is that Pac-Man? No, it's my wife. That's a good conversation starter. This last one is actually my favorite. I think I might like this more than the whole wall. You gotta back way up. Soon.
It's more like nose. You know, it's not this. You should set up a little glass or something that you look through that makes it look real far away.
Oh, reverse binocular trick. I'll have to give you some reverse binoculars with some ink on them.
It is weird that it's me.
It is weird that it's you.
I want you to do it of our dog.
I had a lot of fun with this project, and I hope that you enjoyed it and maybe even learned something. If you have any ideas of things I could paint on my wall, let me know. And until next time, thanks for watching.
Lest I chat with horse? Naonays.
Yes.
Told you this project was important.
I love that name. Neonaze is a good name.
My CNC chainsaw is gonna save the day.
Stay back. I will kill you.
And hey, 2 thumbs way up.
Well, thank you for the
So
thank
it's
you for the
obviously not a
follow,
real bear
Neonaze.
trapping
Welcome to
log.
the house.
It's the idea
Thank
of a
you.
bear. And my CNC chainsaw will remove everything that isn't the bear. Although normally the log is wood, not foam. We'll get to that.
If you're wondering why I'm trying to cut bears out of logs with chainsaws, this is something that people do. And I could even buy one, but they are really expensive. And
We'll
I knew
merge
in my
those
heart that I could
layers,
make
so now
a
our
much
horn
worse
is
one
all on its
for free.
own layer.
I just need thousands of dollars in equipment. This is one of those ideas that's so bad it wraps back around to good. I think you know what I mean, right?
So
Look
the
at this
basic idea
cutie.
here is
Where?
I'm attaching a custom chainsaw to the end of a robotic arm. So I should be able to move it anywhere that I want and cut whatever I want. The arm is a Tormach ZA6. They asked me if I'd be interested in beta testing it, and there really is only one answer to that kind of question. I live streamed the setup to my Patreon, although I tried to do it without a manual, which was kind of a mistake. I'm sure my CNC chainsawing feature requests have been invaluable. Robot arms are super cool. They can move and rotate any way. See how the joints are moving in crazy ways to make it go in a straight line? The math behind this is called inverse kinematics, and for once, I don't have to solve it. Thank goodness.
So to understand CNC chainsaws, you first have to understand a few things about normal CNC machines. I'm sure you've seen a CNC machine run. You put a block of metal in, you hit a button, it goes to town, and you get a nice part when it's done. Have you ever wondered how it knows where to cut? The answer is it doesn't. It doesn't
I
know
like
anything.
the way that looks.
The only thing that a CNC machine knows how to
Hissed
do
Green Link
is
says this
follow
some real
instructions.
Tony
For
Stank
example, I
shit.
might tell it to go up, maybe a bit
Tony
higher,
Stink?
then down again, to the left, to the right, and so on. If I tell it to stab itself in the face, it'll do it. To make the machine cut this part out, I have to tell it the specific moves that I needed to do so that the resulting shape is the part that I want. The motions that you tell a CNC machine to do, they're called tool paths because they're the path that the tool takes.
When I want to make a part, I load it into special software that generates the instructions for the machine for me. I'll tell it things like drill a hole here or cut a pocket here, and then the software will generate thousands and thousands of specific instructions for the machine to follow to make my part. Just like the CNC machine, the robot arm doesn't know anything. So I'm gonna have to write software to
Just
tell
like
it
me.
specifically how to move
I don't
so
know
that the
anything.
chainsaw cuts out the part that I want. This is one of those things where it's pretty easy for a human to figure out, like, duh, just cut it here, but it's very hard for a computer to figure out. It's kind of like a CAPTCHA.
Dog.
It says tag slush.
These kinds of problems are hard because a computer doesn't see like a human sees. It doesn't have a
got
concept
both
of
our
shape or
horns on the
space.
same
It
layer.
can do things like tell me how much material would be inside of a specific cut. This leads to a kind of guessing game where you test all the different possibilities and choose the best one. This is similar to trying to guess a
It's
password.
cute,
The
thank
number of
you.
combinations of all the different letters
It's
is
definitely
really high.
turning out
For example,
better than
a
I thought it
5-letter
would so
password has
far, and
about
it's
12
just my
million
head.
combinations. It is completely infeasible to go through all these possibilities to find the best or even a really good cut. I'm going to start by focusing on just removing most of the material and not worrying too much about the shape of the part. I'm going to do it in a very inefficient way, but it'll allow me to avoid most of the problems I just described. I'm going to use what I call the apple peeler algorithm. Have you ever seen one of these old-timey apple peeler / slicers? If you haven't, they are a miracle of science. The interesting thing about this apple peeler is how it removes the apple from the core. It essentially does one long continuous spiral slice.
I can do something very similar with the chainsaw.
is
If this was my log,
my
I could cut down the depth of the part that I
tool?
want and then rotate around, changing my depth to
Ruler,
whatever I need to
no.
just hit the part that I want. And then just
we
repeat that
go.
all the way down the part. This would remove most of the material. To actually do the apple peeler algorithm, I start with my part, and this is a side view. I take a bunch of cross sections of this part that are spaced out
Mike?
by the thickness of the chainsaw
Oh, right,
blade.
right.
Let's say one
That's
of the
really
cross
weird.
sections
You
looks
need to
like this.
click off
My goal
and
is to
then
go
you
all the
can
way around this layer and
undo.
cut away everything that isn't the model. If I do that for every single slice, then it'll remove almost all the material. The downside is we convert almost the entire log to sawdust. But it's easy, and that's what matters. There are a couple problems. The first is that the robot arm can't actually reach all the way around a big part.
There
I'm
we
going to put the
go.
part on an automatic turntable so I can turn it to face the chainsaw. There is another problem. If I cut along this surface, the chainsaw is too big to fit into this zone. I also can't fit the chainsaw into this area here. There's an amazing math trick that I've been wanting to show for a long time, so let me show you. I take the shape of the bar of the chainsaw and I mirror it. I place a copy of it at every single point along this curve. The shape formed by the outer edge of all of these copies is all of the valid spots that I can move
these horns
and it won't go into the places that it can't go in. There's a rigorous definition of this. It's called a Minkowski difference, but it basically is magic.
If we put all this together, we can calculate the chainsaw motions to cut a part out.
I want to try my toolpaths, but I need a chainsaw that sticks out the absolute minimum distance.
The further the saw sticks out, the more it will multiply any error in the positioning of the robot. And then on top of that, it will multiply the forces going back into the robot, which can overload it.
Think about it like a wrench. The longer the handle is, the more torque you can put for the same amount of force. And that's why I have this bar, which they call a cheater. When you have a bolt that's really stuck, you get way out here and snap your wrench in half.
Ideally, just the blade would be sticking out. But I can't just bolt a chainsaw to the side of the robot like this. These arms move in mysterious ways, and many of these movements will make the saw collide with the robot.
All right, here's my design. It's built around a pole saw, which is basically a chainsaw on a stick, which you use to cut branches out of trees and stuff like that. The number one concern for this design is keeping it as compact as possible so that it sticks out the minimum amount. The way my pole saw works is there's a shaft going into the back of it, and if you turn the shaft, that drives the blade. I'm driving the pole saw through this belt, which allows me to fold the motor up next to the pole saw and make it a lot more compact. This motor is an electric skateboard motor, so it's almost an electric skateboard.
Well, I guess technically this one should be on
arm at least most of the time.
This one should be behind.
All right, let's get this thing built.
Right?
Remember, this is my software-only project.
Yeah.
Don't pay any attention to what I'm doing here.
But it should be over towards the edge. Be further apart, like.
It occurred to me how dangerous this thing is. It has a kill radius of like 1.5 meters, and it can really zip around.
All right, it's pretty safe now. I really just want to go for it, but some tests on a small log seem smart.
Maybe the problem is I need to angle the back one more.
Oh, finally.
I really wish I would have built and tested the chainsaw before spending an entire week writing the apple peeler algorithm. I thought it would be all right based on my big chainsaw, but it is just way too slow. I estimate from the speed that it was cutting that it would take about 10 hours to remove most of the log. And there's zero chance that that little chainsaw would survive continuous cutting for 10 hours.
Yeah. I think that's how
Now that we've established that converting the entire log to sawdust isn't a great strategy, I need to find a way to calculate a series of cuts that removes as much material as possible. Although this is where it gets tricky.
If I'm only allowed to take slices off the model, then there'll be no way for me to get into these concave areas. The best I'll be able to do is something like this. In computational geometry, this is referred to as a convex hull.
Anyway,
That's no good. I want my bear to have curves. What I really want is for the chainsaw to take scoops out of the part. Chainsaws can't do this. They can't turn. They can only keep cutting in the direction that they're cutting in. So the best thing that I can do, come in and cut and then come back out, and then come in from another angle and meet the other cut, and then this will remove a sort of a wedge shape.
Unfortunately, throwing wedges into the mix makes choosing a good cut about 1,000,000 times harder. Now I have to think about where the cut is, but how wide it is and how long it is. I'm not going to go through all the math, but my conservative estimate for the number of possibilities is approximately 1 bazillion. It would probably take my computer 1,000 years just to count them. So what I need is a way to search through this massive number of possibilities and find my needle in a haystack. I'm going to try a computational trick called gradient ascent.
Imagine I have a little ball and I'm trying to get it to the top of this peak. I could move the ball to every single point on this map and then figure out which one is the highest, but that's really inefficient because I have to check so many points. The idea behind gradient ascent is that I start with a guess, and then I say, if I move the ball side to side, does that make me go up or down? And if I move the ball in the other direction, what does that make me do? And from this, I can figure out what direction will make the ball go up the steepest path. So you move up some, and then you repeat it, and you do it again and again. And in very few steps, the ball will walk up the hill and get to the peak.
I can do the same thing for my cutting problem. I can start with a guess and see how much material that cut would remove. And then I can figure out how much the removed material would change if I tweak the cut. In doing this for all the possible changes, I can figure out the direction that will most improve the cut.
This method sounds really good, but the devil's really in the details. I've spent more than a week on this, and I cannot get it to work. The problem with gradient ascent is that it can get stuck at points that aren't actually the highest point. You can imagine that if my guess was here, I would walk up to this point, and then the ball would happily say, I'm at the highest point, but it's really a false summit.
Getting stuck at a false summit happened in my program almost every time.
I'm sure there's someone really smart out there who could make this work, but I can't. So this means I'm gonna basically have to write it again using a different technique. Hopefully third time is the charm, because I don't know how much more of this I can take. I'm a little weary of writing code, so I'm gonna go work on some other problems. There's a very subtle problem that I have to deal with. If I don't fix it, my parts are gonna look completely wrong.
This stand was made by a total poser amateur welder. This means squareness is unlikely, which is a bigger issue than you probably think.
Imagine that I'm trying to cut this part out with the chainsaw, and the chainsaw can move around the part to cut it from any direction. The robot thinks that up is up. Now imagine that this part is tilted, and this part hasn't been cut yet, so it's just a block. So the chainsaw is going to try to cut this dotted area. It doesn't know that the part is tilted. It'll just miss the part. Where things get really bad is when you start rotating this part that you're cutting. So what will happen is the chainsaw might cut too shallow over here. Then if you rotate that part that you just cut 180 degrees, then you bring the chainsaw over here, it's gonna cut way too deep, and it's just gonna completely destroy your part. Getting your rotation axis lined up with the chainsaw is extremely important.
Everything is adjustable, and I made a calibration system so that I can measure this and then dial everything in. I could fix this in software, but I'm pretty sure I would do it wrong the first time, so this is just easier.
For machines like this that can kill you and not even realize that they killed you, the e-stop is really important. It's what you slam if anything is going wrong and everything stops. Although the way I originally designed this, there was 2 e-stops. There's an e-stop that I made that would cut the power to the chainsaw, and there was an e-stop built into the robot that would stop it. I found this a bit concerning. If the robot is coming at me, I have to decide which e-stop I'm gonna hit. I found a way to wire my button up so that it stopped the chainsaw and the robot. I press this whenever I'm gonna go into the kill box and disables everything. I have the warning sticker and I have the e-stops, but I still feel like it would be really easy for this thing to kill me. And so I wired in this party/warning light, and whenever the system is in kill mode, it will enable this, and it's a nice visual indicator that you will die if you come in here.
I think it's time to get back to the software.
So before everyone tells me, I know that a rapidly exploring random tree is probably the way to go here. If you don't know what that is, it's just a way of searching an enormous number of possibilities to find a pretty good solution. From my perspective, this would be a terrible solution because I would have to write a lot more code. And besides, I have a half-baked solution that has a chance of working. Imagine that this is my part and this is the remaining material that I need to cut away. I start by taking every point along the boundary of the material I need to cut, and I calculate how far it is to the closest point on the model and what direction I need to go to get there. I use this to find the furthest point from the model, and then I search along this direction to figure out the biggest cut that I can take. I'll explain how that works in a second. This method works pretty well, but it does have a big problem. If I search at this location right here, I could very easily end up searching in this direction or in this direction. And when I look at this, I think I would want to do a cut kind of like this so that I really get into that notch.
Do I have
so what
like
you can
my
do is you can search in this
my
area.
mute mic
What are the possible
button
directions I
set
could
to
go
something that I
in
can
this area?
like accidentally
Then you can
press
search for
easily or
that range of
something? Because
angles
it just
and
muted
pick up
again,
these
and I
special
cannot
cases.
hit my mute
So when
button.
I say I search along a direction, let me tell you what that
The
means.
hotkeys.
Imagine that I'm trying to find the best possible cut along this path to the part. My simple algorithm starts here, and it figures out what's the widest angle cut that it can do. It tests all the way up to the part and chooses the best one.
Doing exactly what I just described is probably still too slow, but it's not too bad to write, so let's try it anyway.
All right, this is probably going to take a while. I have a very unexpected problem, which is that I
that's
cannot
why.
find a good 3D model of a bear to cut.
It's because
I'm
I
gonna do tons of
have
these things.
my
There's just tons of bears
mute
in
and
the T-pose,
unmute
which
set
would
to
be
the
hilarious
delete
to carve out of a
key.
log,
That's way
but
too
they
easy
just
to
don't really
press
fit
on
the
accident.
aesthetic that I'm going for. So I found this dog model, Don't let the low poly count fool you. It doesn't matter. I'm cutting this with a chainsaw.
All right, it's been a while. Let's see if the algorithm's done.
This is way too slow. This will take a week or two to process. Thankfully, we have an ace up our sleeve called software optimization. This means using
All right, let's
tricks
change
to make
that to
your code go
something really
faster,
hard to do.
make it
really hard to hit on
read,
accident.
and usually break it. So my plan is to take advantage of what's physically happening, like what these computations actually represent in reality, and I'm going to use that to cut out a lot of computation that I don't have to do. We can know from the geometry that some things may or may not happen without testing them. For example, if I run a test at this point and I find that this is the widest wedge
if
that I
I
can cut,
want to
I
hit
know that
keyboard
any angle
buttons to
less
mute
than
the
this
mic, I
will
have to
also
hit
work
Control
because it's
Shift
inside of the
Delete.
bigger angle. I also know that any point
That
on
should
this
be
trajectory
pretty
before this
impossible
one
to hit
is
on
also
accident.
good at that angle because they're also contained within it. By doing this single test, I eliminate
And does
an
the
enormous
button
amount of
on
variables
Touch Portal
that I
still
don't have
do?
to test anymore. I can do similar
It
tricks
does,
when I figure
okay.
out how long the wedge
Problem
cut should be,
solved.
as well as what orientation it should be at. I was just really excited because my optimized code ran in less than a millisecond, and then I realized that I optimized it so hard that it didn't actually compute anything. I fixed my dumb problem, and it is a lot faster. It's maybe about 10 minutes to generate the cuts for model, whereas before it was days and weeks and months, so solid improvement.
Everything that I've described so far is to compute a single cut. To compute all the cuts, I just do that routine over and over. And when it's done, I have a set of moves that the chainsaw needs to do to cut out my model. All right, I need some big logs. Fortunately, I know a guy with a tree. This log looked a lot smaller outside. All right, here we go.
What was I doing? Oh yeah, the rings on the forehead.
The other purpose of these stop is to stop the robot before it does something stupid that I told it to do. All right, here we go. For some reason, the chainsaw is getting hot, like really hot. If I try to cut into the log so that the tip is going into the log, it just won't cut. I think what's happening is that the blades on the tip just aren't cutting, they're rubbing. This is why I was smoking so bad and setting off my smoke alarm. I think the problem might be related to this little anti-kickback tooth. There's no way that I'm gonna be able to cut this log, at least not today. With some really big changes in my toolpaths to maybe rock the saw or something like that, I might be able to get through it, but that completely breaks everything that I did. We'll save that for a future project or something. For now, I'm just gonna do the reasonable thing and compromise. This is basically a log, right? If you think I'm just gonna hit go and it's gonna work, you are sorely mistaken. In fact, let me show you my 5 easy steps to wasting an entire week. Start by going up to the machine full of
Hey, I
E-stop
could write
options.
that book.
Then hit the start button. Within 5 seconds, smash the E-stop. Go upstairs and fix whatever boneheaded programming error you made. And then go back to step 1. And for a bit of variety, hit the robot with the chainsaw several times. Ideally, this would be violent enough that you have to rebuild the whole saw, at least 4 times.
No, I don't
But
want
look
that
on the
to be
bright side,
15, I
there
want
is
it
a
to be
finite number of ways
1.5.
to screw it up, so you will eventually finish. This doesn't exactly look like a dog, but it doesn't totally not look like a dog either. I think I need to go figure out what the heck is going on,
dumb.
but it's something.
Why am I
A lot
trying
of
to
testing
rotate
later,
a
I
circle
caught the
then?
perpetrator red-handed, and
Fix
it was me.
The way it looks.
Previously on Stuff Made Here.
Getting your rotation axis lined up with the chainsaw is extremely important.
Long story short, I screwed up the alignment. Nothing lined up, so I was pretty much just skewering the poor dog randomly. It should be fixed now, although that's what I said before. I'm almost out of things I can screw up, so I'm feeling pretty good about this one.
Stay back. I will
What
kill you.
happened? Why did it turn black? What did I do? Why did it turn black?
Finally! This was a long time coming, but it is so cool.
What did I do? Ah!
Overall,
No.
I'm really happy with how this
Don't
turned
do
out.
that.
My heart says make a wooden dog, but my brain says, but think of all the other
no.
things you can do with this arm.
Don't.
I'm torn.
This is way better than I was expecting, especially based on the last result. There were some areas that it just couldn't reach, and so it's not cut there. And then there's some cuts where it couldn't make the connecting cut, so there's a few slices just into the model. I'm super curious to see what my wife thinks of this. I think she's really gonna like it. She likes dogs. But before I get to that, I want to talk about this video's sponsor. If you can take just a minute to check it out, it really helps me out and I would really appreciate it. This video is sponsored by KiwiCo. What KiwiCo does is they send you a crate every month with everything that you need to build an entire project. And I've talked a lot about growing up and making things and why, honestly, KiwiCo is phenomenal. My wife also grew up making things, so I thought it'd be interesting to hear from her instead of me for once. It's in the box.
Ah, electroluminescent sculptures.
In this crate, you bend EL wire to make really cool sculptures. When I saw this, I knew my wife would love it.
That's one of the cool things about these crates is that there's so many different types. Like, I think this one you're gonna like.
So you probably noticed that I like engineering. My wife is totally different, which is one of the reasons I love her so much. She really is into the arts. It was fun to watch her do this crate because it was something that she really enjoys.
Ooh. Oh, it's so cute.
Whatever your kid's age or interest might be, there probably is a KiwiCo crate that they're gonna love. So go to kiwico.com/stuffmadehere. You'll get 50% off your first crate, and I've put a link down in the description.
I really do recommend it. I think just within our immediate family, there's probably been like 10 crates given and received.
I had fun with this.
Yeah, she's gonna go
make another one.
She's gonna go make another one.
It's so cute.
You like my dog?
I love it.
Where should we put it?
On a column like those lions. You should make one in wood. And
yeah, I try. I think it looks a lot better than the first dog.
Well, yeah, that looks like a weird mountain that someone would call Monkey Rock or something, because it sort of looks like a monkey a little bit. You should put the crown on the dog.
Ah. This project was really fun, and if you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing. It helps me out a lot, and it'll keep you in the loop when I post new projects, so win-win.
Win.
Oh, wait, the final question. So we both made dogs. Whose dog is better?
That really is a hard one, actually.
And they can go
if it's so hard, why does this dog have a crown on?
I've never done a live stream before. So when I was asked if I wanted to give a live robotic haircut at one of the biggest live stream events of the year, I said, how about instead of using the original robot, we totally redesign it, rewrite the software, give it some new skills, and attempt the first haircut ever on a famous YouTube personality live. I mean, what could go wrong, right? This crazy contraption that I'm sitting in, this is the new robot. And redesigning it wasn't totally up to me. The old robot had some concerns, mostly related to the scissors.
Another issue with the old robot is that it's now a pumpkin carver. It's a long story.
I'm gonna just spoil it. This was a stupid plan.
Live streams are insanely risky. We messed up a lot of perfectly good hair, and I ended up having to experiment on myself.
Oh my gosh.
But it's gonna take a bit of work for you to truly understand the depths of the stupidity.
Like what I'm making here?
Let's
Thank
start
you.
at the beginning. I'm
It's
super
not
excited by the
turning
chance to
out as
redesign this. The last robot had
bad
a
as
few
I thought it'd
problems.
be.
The biggest one being that you
And
got a
that's
mullet,
just
whether
a
you
theory.
wanted it or not.
A hair
You also
theory.
leave a ridiculous amount of hair
Thanks for
around your
watching.
ears. This is a chance to fix those issues, but while we're at it, it's also a chance to take things to the next level.
It is a robot, so how about cutting a pattern into the side of your hair? That would be pretty cool. Aside from MatPat, there's also me.
It's been what? 5 months since I last had a haircut. We're definitely gonna put me in the robot and take care of this problem as well. I'm also going to see if I can find anyone else to stick in the robot because the more the merrier, right? This is all that's left of the first robot, and it was a pretty immature design.
No.
When you take something immature and thrust it into the limelight, it's gonna come with baggage.
And this robot was no exception. It
I
was
need
a
another
robotic
new
arm
layer.
that could move anywhere on your head by rotating around it, moving up and down, and then rotating in a bunch of different ways so that it could point towards your head. On the end was a mechanism that could detect where the head is, grab your hair, and then cut it to whatever length you want.
If you do this on every point of your head, theoretically you have the haircut that you want. The new robot has totally different parts, but it operates in a similar way to the old one. It just does it better and fixes a lot of issues. The old robot was fundamentally flawed. It couldn't cut below a certain height, and this resulted in an automatic mullet, which is pretty awesome, but it would be nice if it was optional. And the fix for this is easy. Flip the robot upside down. Now you can reach as low as you want. If you made the arm longer, it could easily be a back hair cutting robot. The old robot had these dangerous scissors. The main risk was grabbing your ear and then giving it a little snip. I didn't want to become Holyfield at the hands of Muhammad Ali bot, so I added extra space around my ears to keep the scissors away. This leaves a ton of hair around your ears, which knocks a bunch of points off your IQ.
Smaller.
The scissors are also limited in how short they can cut, and they're pretty slow. We're gonna swap out the scissors for high-powered trimmers. These can cut right over the ears, they can cut really short, and they're fast. Trimmers also make it easier to do a tool change, in this case to drop in a second trimmer that'll do the pattern cutting. This robot has one other issue that you might not expect. This tube was just the worst. It caused so many problems. It would kink, it would stall the motors. I actually wrote software to try to detect situations where the hose would get caught or get kinked, which is horrible. It's the last thing you want to be doing when you're cutting hair live. I've been staring at this hose for so long, and I cannot find a way to arrange it where it won't happen.
If the tube has a problem flexing, just don't have the tube.
So if a thing is causing me a problem, remove that thing and I won't have a problem.
Oh, I can't.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't
I
edit.
think I would have tried that.
This one.
Alright, the thing that was causing the problem has been removed, and I think the hose issues.
It just adds another outline.
This is a special pivot that you can vacuum through. Putting this on all the joints means that there's no hose to kink. Problem solved. This new robot is super cool, but a new robot like this comes with serious risk of not working all the time, and a live stream you get one chance. If it breaks, that's it. I'll fail in front of like, I don't know, 10 or 15 million people, and it's a lot harder than you might think to guarantee that something like this will work all the time. Almost every single part is essential. That means if even a single wire breaks, it won't be able to function properly. You can think of it as if each part of the robot forms a link in a chain. If one link goes, the entire chain fails.
Why is it getting
the more
all
links there are in the chain, the more opportunities there are for something to break. And when you look at the mathematics of this chain, you'll see that I'm even more screwed than you probably think. Imagine that each part of the robot has a 1 in 10 chance of failure whenever I do a haircut. It's like rolling a 10-sided die, and if I get a specific number, like a 1, then that part fails. The problem is the way that these probabilities combine. Remember, if a single part fails, the entire robot fails.
I don't like the idea of a robot barber, especially when it's
not
supposed to give me a clean shave on my neck.
In fact, if I roll the dice 200 times, I should only expect it to happen once. Even if the parts have a 1 in 1,000 chance of failure, which would correspond to a die with 1,000 sides, I should still expect roll failure 1 out of 20
dice with
times.
1,000 sides. Did you mean a
statistical
sphere?
reality is the most likely thing to screw me over. There's lots of parts that need to be really reliable. This is made even worse by something else I'm gonna get screwed by. Infant mortality. You might think if I make a thing, the odds of it failing are something like this. It's reliable when it's first made, but as it starts to wear out, the odds of it failing go up. But in reality, the odds of failure often look like this. Things tend to fail a lot early in life. This is what's called infant mortality. The things that get past this tend to have pretty good reliability until they get old and die peacefully in their sleep. This curve is so common it has a name, which is a bathtub curve for pretty obvious reasons. You're probably wondering what the deal is and why this happens. When you make something, there are a lot of ways to do it wrong. And when that happens, the thing that you made either doesn't work at all, or it fails really fast. You can be sure I'm going to have plenty of assembly issues. This means I need to do lots of extra testing to get through all the infant mortality issues. If I don't, I'm virtually guaranteed to fail. Alright, I'm about to do tons of haircut robot testing. Meet me in the bathtub. That actually might not be the smartest thing to tweet. Getting this done is really tight because I had 2 other videos that I was making, but I left several days before I fly out to do all the rigorous testing. Alright, I'm finally done with the lockpicking video. We're gonna publish it and see how it does out in the world by itself. Alright, this is the best part. After all that work, finally get to watch it and see what people think.
Tons of people want you to send it to the lockpicking lawyer.
I'm definitely gonna send it to the lockpicking lawyer, don't worry. Well, there's no time for relaxing. I gotta go test this robot. Do you know where my Mac is?
Isn't that dead?
All the code to do a haircut is on the computer that I fried cutting pumpkins. I actually have about 80 hours till I fly out. That's a long time. That's like 2 full work weeks of work. If anything, this is for the best because the code I had before was pretty terrible, and this is my chance to do it the right way. So much for testing, but I can't test anything without code. So it really wasn't too bad. It took me about 30 hours. The general idea behind the software is very similar to the last haircutting robot. So there's a 3D head that I paint the length of hair I'd like to cut on. How long the hair is corresponds to how dark the color is. There's a second 3D model of the head that I paint the angle I'd like the cut to be done at. And then I take both those heads and compute the series of locations I should cut with. This is very similar to the way that the previous robot worked. If you want to understand better, you can check out the other video. There's a new piece of functionality, which is the ability to take a logo and project it onto the head, and then use that to compute a series of cuts to realize it. I'll get into the details of how that works later when I'm a little bit less tired and I have a little bit more time. Remember all that stuff I was saying about getting past infant mortality? It actually applies to code as well. So when the code is new, there's going to be a lot of bugs. You have to work through them and test it before you get to the kind of reliable zone. And I still haven't tested the hardware. We got like 40 something hours until I fly out. It is crunch time. Oh, hey, are you tired? Well, it's time for everyone's favorite thing, integration hell. This is when everything that can break, breaks. And first up, why in the world is the angle of this servo wrong? Everything looks fine, and I just don't have time, so I'm gonna do a firmware patch. It's just gonna correct for it, so it'll go to the right angle that I want, but I would really like to understand this one. It can really subtly break stuff and just screw me in the future. All right, now why does it cut the top of my head at the right height, but not the sides? I have been trying to solve this since like midnight. My brain isn't working very well, so I'm gonna go sleep for a couple hours, and hopefully I'll wake up with the solution because we've got
that should be
18 hours or something until I fly out.
Up by
so I got some sleep, and I finally found the problem. I would really like to understand this one. It can really subtly break stuff and just screw me in the future. I at least called it, right? Such a waste of time. It's about 12 hours until I fly out and I still haven't done a haircut. The stress is really starting to get to me, I'm not gonna lie. My plan has been to give myself a haircut before flying out, but at this point there's no time to fix it if I butcher it. No one wants to be seen in front of millions of people with terrible hair. Even if I dared, I don't think it's in the cards. This last issue is tough. These 3 switches are used to detect when the robot contacts your head. This is how it knows where your skull is so it can cut to the right length. It turns out heads are a little bit pointier than you would think, and if you hit them at just the right angle, none of the switches will get triggered, and the robot will plow into your head. This keeps happening to me, and it's pretty annoying. I've been trying to come up with a software fix where I strategically rotate the head of the cutter to an angle that will guarantee that the switch will hit. I'm just too tired for this right now. I thought I had an awesome solution using metal rods to extend the limit switches, but the problem is nothing else worked. For some reason, it just wouldn't suck the hair up into the tube, so we're pretty much out of time. We're gonna do a really dirty hack. This switch is wired in with the switches that detect the head, so I can hold this, and if MatPat's head is about to get bonked by the robot, I can hit it, and the robot will stop and continue on. I got through a dry run haircut with a little bit of help from the override. I only had to hit it a couple times, but without it, we'd ruin the haircut. Time to pack it up and fly to LA. Talk about just squeaking through. The main reason I agreed to build this and fly out here is that it's for a really good cause. It's a charity live stream for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. They're doing really good work to advance cures and prevention for childhood cancer and other life-threatening diseases. My hope is attempting a robotic haircut on MatPat will generate some interest and raise some money. It's all for a really good cause, so if you have the means, please consider donating. It is the day. The robot was giving me a ton of problems last night. I rewired stuff, I fixed some serious software problems. I think it works now. We're going live. A month of hard work and lost sleep coming to a point. Please, robot, don't fail me now.
Let's save this. So I haven't saved since I started.
People have asked me if the robot really talks. Of course. My job in the moment was supposed to be an entertainer, but my secret job was to make sure the robot didn't crush Matt, and I almost failed.
Did they put product in your hair? It's really having a hard time sucking your hair into the tube. Oh no, is that bad? Oh yeah, your hair is like a brick. Give it a little tussle.
I thought the robot was struggling because the hair was too stiff from whatever product was in there, but I realized later that whatever was in there made the hair clog up the vacuum system. I really wish I would have foreseen that, but I never would have. It was still really fun, and a bunch of money was raised for a good cause, so I'm gonna call it a win. Everything but the haircut, that was a fail.
You don't want to go toward the mirror right now.
We saved attempting to cut the St. Jude logo into MatPat's hair for the very end. Cutting the logo takes a page out of old school TV technology. To produce an image, an old school TV scans out a point of light very fast down a series of lines. As it scans out the lines, it changes the brightness of the point of light according to the image that it's trying to display. And doing this with a haircut robot is very similar. We can scan out a series of rows with the trimmer, and instead of brightness, we can adjust the length of the hair. I'm going with black and white. Either there's hair or approximately no hair. I was really happy to be saving this for the end because the odds of it working were very low. The trimmer is too stiff. If it doesn't approach your head perfectly perpendicular, it won't sit flat against your head. When that happens, it just doesn't really cut very well. I was willing to settle for a faintly discernible outline. This would have been straightforward to fix, but there just wasn't enough time and I had to focus on the haircut. The show was running over time, so we started the trim but then cut it as a cliffhanger, which is perfect for me because it didn't seem to be working very well, and this is a way for me to get off scot-free. Although I guess I'm telling everyone that right now. I would have loved to have seen a totally sick fade and a logo cut on the live stream. That's the nature of doing it live. As they say, there's plenty of more hair in the sea, starting with mine. And my brother's. Don't worry, we're gonna get a logo cut. Although before I let the robot go to town on me, I wanna fix a couple things. The first thing I wanna fix is the Don't Kill Matt button. I just don't like it. I'm replacing the switches with a big plate trigger. The way it works is if anything pushes on the plate, it triggers these switches, and there's just no way to hit this without it going off. And the other problem to fix is the logo trimmer being too stiff. I came up with a full suspension mount that lets it move laterally and rotate. Even if your head has a pothole, this should be able to handle it. All right, it's time to do this for real. No hair gel.
Can you Control Z, please?
All right, do you want 18-year-old douche tuber? Whatever that means.
It doesn't matter. I'll go with 18-year-old.
What? 18-year-old douche tuber.
Dog mode. He'll thank me when he makes it a poodle trimmer.
This machine is a lot less scary than the old one, although it helps that I brought a mirror this time so I could see what was going on. I'm not going to dwell on this one because it's pretty similar to my previous
I don't
robot
like
haircut.
the Don't Kill Matt
So
button.
overall, not the best haircut I've ever had.
Hello, Pebble.
But it did cut around the ears a lot better than the last one. Have you ever seen like a redneck kid haircut? It's usually like a mohawk that goes into a giant bushy rat tail.
Small underworld after all, huh?
This right here
Oh,
is my
Koi-chan.
favorite ever. In the
Koi-chan,
history of
thank you for the raid.
I think about this every day.
It's a software
I think
bug,
about
but
this
it's a
all
long
night long.
story.
I stay
It's a little
awake,
short, but
not
that's kinda my
sleeping,
fault.
because I'm thinking
the style
about
is
this.
me painting on a 3D head, so I got what I painted basically.
How was
It's
your
great to see
stream,
that it can cut
Koi-chan?
hair,
How was
but what I
7
really wanna
Days to
know is,
Die?
can it cut a
Welcome
pattern into your
everybody.
head?
I am
My brother's
Chanel the
coming over,
Cerberus,
so I'm
3
gonna try to
heads and 3
convince him
brain
to let me
cells.
put him in the machine.
And today we're
It just
working
seemed
on a
really
little bit of
important.
art of me and my
Humanity deserves
friends.
to know. But why? Why do they deserve to know?
I'm gonna be.
I don't think you understand
I'm gonna be
me. It's for
redrawing this
humanity.
Scooby-Doo
Look, I
as
love
me and
humans.
my friends.
We're gonna start by giving him a shorter haircut to cut someone's hair that isn't mine, and so we can better see the pattern that the robot attempts to cut into it. It's not a bad haircut. I like the bangs.
Considering.
Yeah. Okay, slight technical error. I did the fade the opposite direction of his natural part, and it doesn't want to go that way, like at all. That's fine. The only thing anyone cares about is the pattern anyway. The goal is to cut this pattern into his hair.
Do
It's
I wanna
simple
increase
and will
the-
probably end
the
up being
close
a
gap?
meta
Is that
commentary
what I
on the
wanna do?
haircut itself. On the scale of Mona Lisa to Just Kill Me, it's looking like we're leaning a little bit towards Just Kill
welcome
Me.
Suneki.
But
This right here is
Welcome,
my
ladies.
favorite thing ever.
Let's see
In
how
the
it
history
looks.
of forever. I think about this every day. I think about this all
Yeah,
night
just
long.
color
I
it
stay
with the
awake,
brush.
not
Kinda
sleeping,
tell.
because I'm thinking about this.
And hey,
Sue,
two
how was your
thumbs
raid?
way up.
How was Kingdom Hearts?
So
Oh,
reverse your hair.
Sketchy. Hello,
Yeah.
Sketchy.
I look like I have a disease.
Thank you for the follow.
I need
Welcome
a
to the
little bit more
hands. How
humanity.
y'all doing?
Pattern carving leaves a small amount to be desired. How'd you rank your haircut?
The overall
Chinawa, hello,
general
Whimsy.
haircut is honestly not bad.
Welcome,
especially
everybody.
The fact it's done by a robot. And now, when it comes
I'm
to
working
the
on some
shaving
art
of the
today.
head,
I'm gonna be
I personally would
redrawing the
give this
Scooby-Doo
a
as
1.
my friends.
The
I'm
fact
gonna be
that it was done
Daphne.
by a robot,
Hang on,
and
let
I
me move,
moved my head
Let me
somewhat,
move my
so it's your
reference.
fault. However, the results.
I'm gonna be
Deserve a 1.
Daphne.
I mean, it kind of looks like it. There's a horrible accident
Void
that
Taffy
combines
Leg
the
is gonna
eyeball
be
and the
Velma.
nose. We're gonna bring
Our
in
other
the
friend
impartial
Boosting
judge,
is gonna be
the
Shaggy.
wife.
Miss Jackie
Okay,
is
so
gonna
for
be
this side-
Fred.
I'd say like an
And
8 or
Barry is
9.
gonna be Scooby.
How would you rate it now?
A 1 also. I see the inspiration, but it's
Execution was flawed.
yeah.
When you go to a gallery and you look at a piece of art and you say, this thing is ugly. Then you read the story behind it and you say, wow, the story behind this art
looks
makes
cute
it
so far. Thank you.
valuable.
It's definitely
art.
turning out better
Anyone
than
who
I thought
says
it was.
anything otherwise, they just don't understand art. I'm still not satisfied with the results. I realized I still have one more head of hair I can try this out on. My hair. I'm pretty sure the problem my brother was having was that his head was moving around too much. So I made this kind of apparatus which will hold my head extremely still. The nose hole isn't for breathing. If it's pushing against my nose, then the angle of my head isn't very well defined, and I want this to be rock solid. This has got to be one of the dumbest things I've done, but it is so satisfying when it finally works. So I finally succeeded on my mission, and things have happened to my hair. The big question is, what do you think of it?
Oh my gosh.
Pretty nice, huh?
If you wanted to
how far did you get into
Sort of is
Kingdom
your
Hearts?
face right
Are
now.
you going to be?
What would you rate this haircut?
Are you going to be playing 2 together, or are you going to be playing it
I see
separately?
why I married you.
Okay.
A 5.
I think she's being nice.
Did you start Kingdom Hearts 2 yet, Sketchy?
Why are you going to wear that hat?
It's cold. I did this image because it was simple and easy to tell if it worked. With a few more tweaks to the mechanics and better software, I think it could do some pretty good images. I need to find something suitable for testing it that isn't my head. I tried carpet, teddy bears, fur fabric, and nothing would work. Hundreds, if not thousands of people have asked me to make my hair cutting robot a real product, but it just isn't good enough. You saw what it did to my hair. I just don't really see it. Reviews are rolling in for cuts made here, and they're a little mixed. But before I get to those, I need to talk about this video's sponsor. Now, you can just skip to the end and check out the reviews if you want, but if you do want to help support these videos and making future things, checking out the sponsorships is a really good way to help out. Have you noticed that my videos have improved over time? A lot of that improvement has to do with continual learning, which is why I'm excited about this video's sponsor, Skillshare. I try to spend at least 30 minutes a day reading textbooks or watching online courses. Skillshare is geared towards creative topics, and they have thousands of courses across web development, graphic design, running a business, and they're constantly adding new courses. And unlike random videos from the web, it's curated and specifically designed for learning. Also, no ads. So here's an example. My video lighting game was terrible. Skillshare has a class called Film Lighting Made Simple by Dan Liu. In less than 25 minutes, I learned the foundational elements of film
I swear to
lighting.
God, I've been
Did you know
following.
that
It's okay,
collecting all the
Sketchy.
random lights in your house and pointing them at yourself is not
That
a good
happens
film
a lot.
lighting technique?
You
Well,
think you're
I do
following
now,
your
and
friends,
I also
but
know what people are talking about when they say things like
you're not
key
to
light
be.
and negative
I thought I was
fill.
following,
I've found that continual learning has a compounding effect similar to
I
compounding
forget.
interest. Skills build on
I
top
forgot
of
who I
skills,
thought
and
I
you
was
get
following,
huge
and then
gains
ended up
over the
I
years.
wasn't.
It's a fantastic investment in yourself. It's also a really good way to invest in
Head
someone that you
pets.
love
Thank you
and
for the
give them a
head
gift that
pets.
has actual long-term value.
Thank you.
Skillshare is less than $10 a month with an annual subscription. That's less than the cost of pretty much any book. And the first 1,000 people to click the link in the description will get a free trial of Skillshare Premium. So check it out, build those skills. Future you will thank you, I guarantee it. All right, the moment of truth. What did people think about their cuts made here? If I'm reading this right, Matt Pat would like us to try again. Well, Matt, I would be honored to ruin your hair. What a great review. It's so refreshing to see someone who's authentic and
The dog
willing to
with the
share it
tablet
with
and the
world,
pen.
You know? When they talk about firing your customers, these are the kind of people they're talking about. They're totally unreasonable and they'd love nothing more than to see you perish. Nice, another 5-star review. People love this place. If you like this video, please consider subscribing. It helps me out a lot and it'll keep you in the loop when I release version 3
Wait,
of
that
this
one
robot
review
or
was from
whatever
Barry.
other semi-deranged
Yeah, we
thing
have
I
to
come
go
up with.
back.
You can support these projects directly by joining my Patreon. You'll also get some behind-the-scenes info. And one other talk about firing.
They promised they'd fix the mullet problem. They gave me another mullet. They said it wasn't a mullet. It was a redneck child rat tail. That's Barry. That's Barry's review.
These are the kind of people they're talking about. They're totally unreasonable and they'd love nothing more than to see you perish. Nice, another 5-star review. People love this place.
Hello,
If you
Kylo
like
Ren.
this
Welcome
video,
in. How
please
you
consider
doing?
subscribing. It helps me out a lot and it'll keep you in the loop when I release version 3 of this robot or whatever other semi-deranged thing I come up with. You can support these projects directly by joining my Patreon. You'll also get some behind-the-scenes info.
Actually,
and one other
Leg,
thing.
Void
I have a New Year's
Taffy,
resolution.
when they get
I
to
build lots of
1,000
stuff, but a lot of it
followers,
isn't
go
that
follow them,
useful.
by the way.
My goal for 2021
They're
is to
going
make
to
a
do a
portion of my
subathon,
projects
and one of
attempt
their
to solve
subathon goals
actual
is to
real-world
make them
problems.
get a mullet.
The reason I'm telling you this is that I want to make sure my list of potential problems
if you want to make
is as
Void
complete as
Taffy get a
possible.
mullet,
So if you know of
go
a
follow
problem
them.
that affects people, that you think maybe I could come up with a proof of concept for, leave a comment. I'll be keeping track of all the things people say, and hopefully in 2021, we'll have some neat proof of concepts that maybe turn into something. Who knows? Thanks. Come on.
It's okay. You're
Not gonna lie, sometimes
You're the best
mullets, if
loser.
done right, look good.
That I know.
Do they?
Instead of being a loser that's somehow
I guess
a
they
winner,
could.
let's actually win.
I don't have skill, but I do have technology. So let's be honest, robots are better than us. They're more precise, great at computation, and they work long hours for no pay. I'm going to apply these strengths to Pool to make a robot that will find and take shots that humans could only dream of. I'll also be using this robot for something that you might not expect. I'm going to use it to play
don't know
Pool
how to draw
online
hair.
physically, which raises some pretty
Has to be
interesting
done by
ethical
someone who
questions.
lived through
Definitely
legit
doesn't seem like
mullets.
it's working.
This was
Has to
kind
be
of a
done by
random idea,
someone
but turned out to
who
be really fun. This just might be
ritualistically
the
watched
star of the whole
Joker.
show. Playing Pool takes skill, for now at least. It's also a game with many variants. I'm going to be focusing on 8-ball Pool. 2 players take turns trying to sink all their balls by striking a white cue ball with a stick. The gameplay boils down to 2 steps. Figure out what shot you want to take, and then hit the balls very precisely to execute it. I want the robot to do both of these things. Figuring out what shot to take, henceforth referred to as the big brain algorithm, is going to take some explaining, and I'll get to that in a minute. The idea behind the robot is a bit more straightforward.
Say I'm trying to make this shot. If I had a robot in the tip of this cue, it could move the tip so that it hits in just the right way so that the ball goes in. Here's what we're going to have to build. A camera system to watch the game and figure out what's going on, a complicated algorithm to interpret this and figure out the best shot, and a Pool cue with a magic robotic tip that can take the shot for us. This is probably the most complex project that I've done.
The robot cue is obviously going to have to move and rotate laterally, but Pool is not 2D. Where you hit the ball vertically matters a lot. Off-center hits put spin on the ball, which gives you control over where it goes. I want the robot to have control.
Mullets are
That means
reserved for
moving and
birch
rotating
lesbians,
vertically as
trust
well.
me.
Fitting
Did
a
I hear something
mechanism
about
that
leg
can
with
do
a
all
mullet?
these
Yeah,
motions
when
into the tip of the
when
Pool
Void
cue is
Taffy
going to be very
gets
hard.
to 1,000 followers,
It's
they're
get
gonna do a
fast.
subathon.
My goal is for it to
And
at
one of the
least
goals is gonna be
remain
having
a
them get a
stick.
mullet.
I have an initial design, but I don't have a good feel for it. I need to hold it. I haven't really talked about my Glowforge, but it's really useful for making quick prototypes like this. I use it kind of like my plasma cutter, where I can very quickly make structures out of flat patterns, except for in this case, out of plastic and wood rather than metal.
I'm glad I quickly prototyped this because there's no way this is going to work. It's just too bulky
hair.
and there's
Hair is
no
hard.
way I'm going to be able to get this stiff enough. Deep down, I knew that a Stewart platform was probably the right way to go here, but I've done everything I can to suppress
Oh, it's
that
gonna be
thought
for your
because I
1 year
know it's
anniversary.
gonna be very painful
Ah,
to
okay,
make.
okay.
The idea is that you arrange 6 telescoping rods in a very special arrangement. You can completely control how this platform moves around by extending and contracting these rods.
I can stick a tiny one of these in the queue to
Oh,
move
that's
it
right,
wherever
that's
I
right.
want.
You were
It's very
just
stiff,
hoping to
so it
get
won't
to 1,000
deflect when I
followers
take a shot, and it's
before
also
the
really
anniversary.
compact.
I wanted
But
to
the
avoid a
subathon's
Stewart
for the
platform because
anniversary.
there's a ton of finicky little parts. Instead of telescopic rods, I have the linkages on these cranks which push them up and pull them down, but it's essentially the same. The defining feature of this Stewart platform is that it's driven remotely through tensioned cables. The servos are on one side of this broomstick, and the moving end is on the other. The electronics are pretty straightforward.
This right
They're
here
mostly
is my
off-the-shelf
favorite
microcontrollers
thing
and other
ever.
components.
In the history of forever.
Man, that
I
end
think
got
about this
thick.
every day.
Not
I think
really
about this
fast.
all night long. I stay awake, not
okay,
sleeping,
there you
because
go.
I'm
These
thinking about
platforms
this.
take a bit of math to move them around, but it's really not
Haha,
too
I
bad.
beat you to the shout
Say I
out.
wanted this platform to move
I beat you to
over
the
and rotate
shadow.
like this.
Haha, I
One of the
win.
actuators gets shorter, 2 get longer, and it results in it being in this position. If I want to calculate how long these actuators need to be, I have the solution right here in front of me. This is how long they need to be for it to go here. Conceptually, all I have to do is move the platform where I want it, and then measure the distance between these sets of points to tell me how long each actuator needs to be.
Gotcha.
I solved it
I
by
gotcha.
drawing a picture, but it's also
my smug
very
emo.
easy to solve this mathematically using linear algebra. That is exactly what my program is doing. This is a case where the results make it look much harder than it actually
What are the
is.
check marks?
If I did
mean
everything
next to
right, the
labels?
platform should move wherever I want now. Wow.
I
Working on
don't
the
shut
first
up
try
myself.
is not normal.
Well, you should.
It's pretty cool how the motions all combine, isn't it? This air cylinder on the tip of the cue will be used to fire the shot. It's connected to pressurized air, and when I open a valve, it shoots out really fast. But not all shots are done at maximum power. We need a way to vary the power from gentle touch to battering ram. To do this, I built the power pack. This tank is
what are the
for
check
car
marks?
hunts.
What are these
The
check
tank
marks
has a
mean?
small, wimpy computer attached to
What do
it,
those
which
do?
people call a microcontroller. The microcontroller measures the pressure with this pressure gauge. If the pressure is too low, it'll open this valve, which will connect it to my shop air and pressurize the tank. If it's too high, it'll open this valve and release the pressure. And to fire, I open this valve. It's really simple and works well.
Pounded G.
This cue is really cool, but it's completely useless without some more information. If I'm holding it here, how does the computer know that it needs to move it over here so the shot will go in? I have to know where everything is to be able to figure that out. I have this camera mounted on the ceiling looking straight down. It can see everything going on the pool table.
It has a big problem though. Although this table was the cheapest one that money can buy, it is not this out of square. This image makes the balls look like they're over here, but in reality they're over here. This is caused by the camera being out of square with the table. If I took the position of the balls from this image, then I'm going to calculate the wrong thing. Programmers call this garbage in, garbage out. I've heard this also applies to raising children.
I glued these funny looking tags to all the corners of the table, and they're called fiducials. They're basically a reference point that's very easy for a computer to pick out of an image, kind of like a QR code.
I can find these
No,
4 points and then use them to straighten the image
Wild
up.
Wings
I know
the
where the
other
holes
day
and
for
bumpers are
dinner.
relative to the fiducials, so I know
And
where they
that
are now
place
too.
is just
And then if
full
I
of
find the balls, I know
kids
where they are.
screaming
And the
their
last
heads
thing to find
off.
is the cue, which is why it has these 2
I swear,
fiducials.
every time
One
I go
fiducial
to
tells
that
me where it
Buffalo
is,
Wild Wings,
2
there's
fiducials
always
tells
a
me
bunch
what
of kids
direction
in
it's
there just
pointing. There
screaming
is
their
still
heads
one
off.
little problem. The camera only tells me where
That
things are
specific
laterally because
Wild
it's a
Wings.
2D image. I don't know how high the cue is above the table or how it's tilted. Normally you rest the cue on your hand, but the height of my hand isn't controlled. There's an easy fix for this. It's just like my hand, except plastic screwed to the cue, and most importantly, known height. I still don't know how it's tilted, so I added this IMU to the end of the cue. An IMU is what you give someone when you owe them money but you're broke. IMUs can do all kinds of things, but in my case it tells me what direction is down. So now I can compensate for tilt. I still need to make the big brain algorithm to figure out the best shot. For now, all it can do is a single ball into the hole. I show the shot in this really simple interface that I made, and if I want to hit this shot, it tells me that I need to hold the cue in this area. The problem is that the UI is on the computer and I'm at the table.
I guess I could look at the computer screen, but that's awkward. I want to be unencumbered. I want to enjoy the game of pool the way that it was meant to be played.
I've got an idea. I'm going to project the user interface onto the pool table.
Oh no.
Maybe
One little
the
tiny
shed
hole
have,
took
like,
out
a
my
bit of
furnace,
hangover right
my
there?
lights, my
Not that
security system,
you'll really
and my
be
internet.
able to
This
notice
must
it.
be the
Since
most
my hair
important
is
cable in
just
my entire
pitch
house.
black.
All right, let's see if this thing works.
I have an annoying problem. The projector is just projecting on the table. It has no sense of where anything is. If I just display my UI on the projector, it's totally wrong. Cue ball is here, not here.
If I project a grid of fiducials with the projector, I can figure out where the projector can project relative to the table. From there, it's easy to make the UI line up with anything. All right, we have everything we need to try it. Let's see what this thing can do.
At this point, it looks like I succeeded in building exactly the opposite of what I wanted, which is a pool cue that always misses, even if the shot is really easy. This would make a really good wife mode.
For some reason, the robot is moving to the wrong position sometimes. So what could cause this? I have a camera watching the table, a program which modifies the image to correct for camera distortion, and then another program which extracts the positions of everything. This is plugged into a hacky physics simulation, which does a lot of math to decide the angle of the tip, which is then converted to 6 actuator positions, which are then realized by an untested robot. So why is it going to the wrong position? I have no idea. I present to you a week of pain in 20 seconds. All right, I think I figured it out. No. These plastic pulleys sometimes slip. Let's redesign them. That is the wrong ball. I found some math issues which must be causing problems. You know what? Math is useless. I made a system that records where the cue goes versus where I want and then corrects for it. This has to work. At this point, I'm just systematically testing everything. This is painful, but eventually you run out of stuff that can be wrong.
I finally found the problem. These 6 little servo motors are what control the end of the platform. They were sold to me with specs of how far they can rotate, but 2 of them don't do that, which means they're rotating a different amount than I think, which makes the end either sort of wrong or really wrong, depending on where I'm trying to move it. In my defense, you sort of assume that the thing you bought does what it says that it does.
All right, let me show you what this thing can do. Have you ever woken up from a nightmare, but you're actually still asleep and you're in another nightmare? Yeah, it turns out there's more than one big problem.
So something somewhere is broken, I know that, but I have no idea what it is. I feel like I went through everything trying to solve that servo problem.
I flailed around helplessly for quite a while. We're gonna just fast forward through all that. Ooh, stop, this is the good part. Now back a little bit. It looks like things are in a slightly different position than my software thinks. And remember, garbage in, garbage out. It's not a huge amount, but it's enough to mess up most shots. I think this is due to some kind of optical distortion.
If you've ever used a wide-angle camera lens, you'll have some idea of what I'm talking about.
If I take a wide-angle view of the table and square it up, these points are square, but look at this edge. It's supposed to be straight. This is a distortion caused by the wide-angle lens. My camera already has a calibration that should correct for this, but I'm guessing something somewhere is wrong. Day 4 of flailing, and I'm trying to decide if this is what the pit of despair really feels like.
Everything I do that should make the system better is making it worse.
Because there are so many places that this can be wrong, I'm doing a Hail Mary by developing my own calibration system. The rough idea is I take a bunch of pictures of something that I know the shape and size of. I can solve a series of equations that'll take a location in the image and directly calculate the corresponding location in the real world. Since this goes directly from the image to a predicted location, it will skip over anything that might be broken.
This picture is giving me an idea of the distortion on the pool table. I don't see any physical way this could be an actual optical distortion,
I don't need, like,
which implies that I am an idiot.
Detail.
You know how occasionally a surgeon will accidentally leave their scalpel inside of you? And then you're trying to figure out why you're sick all the time, but you never thought to look for the scalpel inside your belly? The same thing happened to me. And I guess by me, I mean my code. Way back in the beginning when I was developing this code, I was doing a little test, and I accidentally left that code dormant deep in the bowels of my system. This code does a camera distortion correction, and this correction is for a completely different camera than what I'm using.
This was subtly messing up my images, and it could be applied in a couple of different ways, and in one case it was applied twice. It made it very confusing. I'm exaggerating the effect so you can see it. It was a lot more subtle. 5 to 10 millimeters of position error.
So this is roughly equivalent to punching myself in the face for 5 days straight.
All right, moment of truth. All right, 1, 2. Yes, finally. They went in and it wasn't random. A neat thing I realized you can do is use this to guide normal pull shots too.
This
thing is just really fun. Although if I'm gonna go against my wife, I need it to do more than just hit a single ball. I'm gonna get to the big brain algorithm soon, I promise, but there's one thing I wanna try first.
So it should be possible to play pool with someone over the internet. If I send a video feed of the pool table to someone, and then I give them some controls to select the shot to take, the computer will tell me where to hold the stick, and then it will take their shot for them physically.
Kirby the sanity hazard.
Weird.
Well, thank you for following.
We're just gonna skip over that part because it's kind of boring.
All right, let's test it with a game with the wife first.
When it's her turn, she chooses the shot on her computer. It tells me where to hold it. The trigger tells the computer
Forgot
I'm ready.
to follow, my bad. That's all right. You're
and then she hits fire.
And I appreciate it. Thank you.
Cool, I'm even gonna beat you from upstairs.
I think you've just been lucky. That was pretty close.
Doesn't seem like it went where I aimed the cue.
Not your best shot ever.
This is definitely broken.
It seems like it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do.
We should just play when you fix it.
All right, it's working perfectly.
Hey, how's it going?
This concept is so weird, I basically built it on a whim. But
I
it
keep
is surprisingly
thinking all
fun.
of the Xbox notifications
I really
he
thought
put
this
on
would
the
be
video
basically the same as
is my
online pool,
computer.
maybe a little crappier, but it really is different. I was so engrossed I didn't even notice that I lost the game.
Wait, where'd they ball go?
Yeah, I've actually been looking for it for a while.
Wait.
Well, that's that. I'm playing with some people who support me on Patreon, which helps me a lot. So I'm trying to understand why this is so fun. I think it has something to do with it being a real game. In fact, I challenge you to find an online pool game with a more realistic physics engine than this one.
It's almost like two people holding the stick at the same time, which is strange.
Oh, who is this redneck?
Yeah, man.
You just call someone up and play a real game of pool with them.
Nice. Through the internet.
Through the internet. Amazing. Okay, cool.
Maybe this isn't just a goofy tangent. It feels like a legitimate way to connect and have fun with others.
Oh, you sunk us right.
What? You moved it.
Huh?
Nothing.
Remember when they connected Pokemon to Twitch?
Why
What if
don't
I
you
did
come
the same thing with
hey!
this pool table? Basically me versus a crowd.
I
Think
was,
that'd be
I
worth
was
doing?
gonna be famous.
Why didn't you go for the green?
Like,
Because
that's
I
my
call the
follow
shots.
bot, not yours.
Literally,
Get your own.
I call the shots. You're just the meat servo to align my servo.
Alright, finally we get to the fun part, the big brain algorithm. The idea is to make a physics simulation based on what the camera sees. This should look at the entire table and calculate the best shot for you. So what is the best shot? This shot may be the easiest to sink. This shot is a bit harder, but it leaves the ball right next to another ball, which will be easy to sink. What I want is a list of all the possible shots that I could take, and then I can select the shot I want from that list based on risk and probability and whatever other criteria matter.
Imagine I have a table with 3 balls on it. The simplest way to figure out all the possibilities is to just brute force it. I can make a physics simulation where I virtually take hundreds of thousands of different shots and see what happens. There's a lot of reasons doing it this way is bad. The biggest reason for me is that this is slow. So here's what I'm doing. I look at each ball and I calculate all the ways that it can go into holes, bounce off other balls, and anything else that would advance the game. It makes a big fat mess. I do the same thing for all the other balls. Now I have all the possible things that each ball could do individually. The question now is, how do these things relate? Here are a few of the many things that the red ball could do. Could any of these things be caused by something that another ball could do? One of the possibilities for this cue ball is that it directly hits this red ball.
I like
in reality,
the
this cue ball can hit this red ball anywhere in this range. If we hit it right here,
taking all of the
that would send the red
bots
ball along this trajectory. The
and,
white
like,
ball could also bounce off the
them
bumper into the red ball, which could
amalgam.
also cause this shot to happen. Or it could make the red ball hit this
Add
blue
it
ball.
to the lore.
That hit could make the blue ball go into this pocket. If you do this systematically for every ball, you end up with a dense network of all the possible outcomes. This structure is called a graph, specifically a digraph because it's directional. Since everything begins at the white ball, all the paths through this represent a potential shot that I could take. This is a very simplified version that I've drawn. The real version is just a gigantic mess. If you've heard of ray tracing before, what I did here is kind of a second cousin of ray tracing.
It looks incomprehensible, but this graph is very easy for the computer to process. And it has all the information we need to rank the shots. For example, how long is the shot? Or how precisely do I have to hit the ball? I can ask the graph for the shortest path, the longest, which is almost certainly impossible. The robot currently chooses shots based on a blend of distance, precision, and estimated speed. I'm feeling good about my odds of winning at pool for once.
A lot of people will tell me that it would have been more efficient just to practice rather than building this whole system. I agree, but here we are.
Although before I go up against my wife, I want to talk about this video's sponsor. So you know how this works. The sponsor is what basically enables me to spend so much time developing insane pool cues and other crazy things. If you like this video or you like me, taking a minute to check out the sponsor is one of the most helpful things you can do to support me and these projects. This video's sponsor is Micro Center, and you need to know about them. When they asked me if I was interested in doing a sponsorship, I just said, where do I sign? The amount of hours and dollars I've spent at Micro Center is just, I don't even want to know.
How much money have I spent at Micro Center?
Lots. Need a jumbo calculator for that one.
If you are remotely interested in technology, you have to go check out one of these stores. There's just nothing else like it. They have everything. It's the only physical store I can go to and buy parts for my robots. Their selection of computer parts is just fantastic. And somehow their prices are also really good. My computer is built entirely from parts from Micro Center. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but they employ a bunch of nerds, which is amazing when you're trying to figure out what components you should get for building a PC. All that I'm really asking is for you to go and visit a Micro Center. There's 25 of them in the US, and more people should know about them. And before you hop in your car and peel out, if you take just a second to click on the link in the description and enter your email address, this lets Micro Center know that Stuff Made Here sent you.
This is how they decide if these videos are worth sponsoring, which helps me out a ton. But it also helps you out because when you do this, they'll give you a coupon code which you can take to the store and they'll give you a free micro SD card and flash drive. So thank you for hearing me out, and thank you Micro Center for supporting this video. Q versus
SD
wife.
Card and
Who
a
will win?
flash drive?
I thought this thing was perfect.
There was some initial back and forth, but then the robot really hit its stride.
I can't hold it still enough.
Oh, doggy.
I have no shots now.
Yep, my little stripies are blocking you.
And then the 8-ball. Nice.
You really didn't win the robot one.
It was my brain encoded in the software.
Sounds a little creepy.
Let me put it this way. If your kid wins, do you win?
Make my outlines with
Then I'm a
a
winner.
thinner brush.
The robot is not your kid. We've talked about this.
Getting this thing done was about as hard as labor.
Oh, please.
So hard.
All right, I'm out of here.
I think this pool cue is awesome, although there are still a lot of things that I just didn't have time to get to. I'd like to take the pool move solver to the next level and have it look ahead multiple moves like a chess engine.
This is where ball spin becomes really useful, and so far I pretty much just ignored it.
I think this is a good proof of concept, and hopefully you liked it. If you have any thoughts or ideas, let me know. I'd love to hear them. Thanks.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing. It helps me out a lot and keeps you in the loop.
Tonal change. I want the hair to be a little brighter.
I made an explosive bat to hit record distance baseballs, but all I can think about is what would happen if it hit my face. I think it'd be pretty bad. But this is not the only question that I have. What if I converted it into a golf club? Could I outdrive a pro or maybe even hit a distance record? Or what if I attached an axe head to it? Would that be as unnecessarily awesome as it sounds? If you haven't seen the video on making and testing this bat, I'll put a link here. So this bat is full of mysteries, and I think it's about time that we crushed them. Welcome to our Value Brand Engineering Mystery Show. We have a bat that is full of mysteries that just need to be solved. You've seen me load this bat, right? It's freaky. Imagine that I'm loading it like an idiot.
I can imagine that.
So I put 4 shells in, and then I shove it down like one of those Acme Dynamite boxes, and then it just blows.
I don't think you'd have any.
Oh yeah, that
like a bone.
That
like
bat
the
is
chicken
from an
drumstick
earlier
end or something.
episode.
That's horrifying.
Where it has.
I want to know just how bad it would be.
Blank
I think it should be pretty easy to test. You
shots.
just need to find some stuff that's squishy
It
like
has like
human.
blank shotgun shells in it, I think.
We raided the pantry, and we found lots of squishy biological things that are kind of like humans in a way.
Time to crunch some mysteries. So the apple is mostly water, and it has a skin. It's basically him.
So I thought, oh, an apple. That's a nice, easy warm-up. We'll get to see some destruction. No. I felt like I was in an infinite loop trying to make this bat fire with an apple.
Come on. Come on.
So there seems to be 2 really important things for setting off the bat. The apple is lighter than the baseball. Not a ton, but it's lighter. Having enough mass to push the piston in. We think that that's part of why the apple's having a hard time setting the system off. The other thing is how hard it is. As the piston compresses and then hits the shells, when the piston stops, it's kind of like the baseball hitting a wall. So you get a nice kick. When you feel an apple, it's pretty hard. But the bat hits it so hard, the apple just immediately caves in and starts to turn into applesauce. It means the apple is a lot softer when it bottoms out. It's like trying to stop applesauce. There's no kick. I made a bunch of small changes to the system to make it lighter and smoother and less friction, and I seem to just barely be able to hit
I never have this issue with the MS Paint
Finally!
bucket.
Oh man, that made a mess.
It does not want to fire.
It doesn't fire easily. Does that mean it's safe?
I don't think so. Look at this. It's crazy. This is the fastest way I could get something that is sort of like a hand. I've been trying to find a way to trigger the bat with the bananas because the idea isn't that the bat hits my hand like a baseball, it's that it goes off when I'm pushing it down. So what I came up with is I'm gonna yank on it with a string. When it goes off, it'll just immediately break the string. The vast majority of the energy will go into the bananas.
3, 2, 1.
So if your hands are made of bananas, I think it's fair to say you don't want to get them hit by this bat.
You know, I think he was right.
I think I had a gradient
A lot left.
save.
So this is a bit
that
closer
was
in
basically
size and weight to my head.
And it's white.
That is
my,
also
like,
true.
fur color.
So this bat is
Lethal.
that's so scary.
Yeah, if your body is frail like a piece of fruit, you don't want to come anywhere near this thing.
Keep it away from nursing homes, for sure. My hand is obviously a lot tougher than a banana.
Right, that's why it's always covered in band-aids, huh?
I didn't say it's bulletproof. I think it's time to make a more realistic hand, so I'm gonna go try to find a hand skeleton model or something like that. We can cast ballistic gel around it and then hit that.
Yeah, that seems more realistic.
Yeah, it'll be cool looking, I know that. I think it's time to do the axe.
He's been talking about this for weeks.
Yeah, because it's the most amazing thing ever. You could slice a baseball in half. You could one-hit KO a tree.
So how do you make an axe bat? Well, when a bat loves an axe very much, they come together, and half of the axe is combined with half of the bat, and you get a beautiful little axe bat.
We think the reason that it won't fire is really similar to the apple. Adding the axe head to the bat made the piston assembly much heavier.
Need a stretch.
And when the ball hits it, it accelerates a lot slower than it would without the axe. It seems to be different enough to just not set off the charges no matter what we do.
It took an enormous amount of fine-tuning and changing out some parts, as well as dealing with some other issues. We finally got it to fire one shell.
Doesn't look like it really did anything.
Not a whole lot going on there.
Lame.
I mean, it is really lame.
Yeah.
It did something.
There's a small slice.
It barely even sliced through the cover. This bat supports up to 4 shells. I think I know the answer, which is more power.
Ugh.
We just went through exactly the same thing trying to fire 2 shells as we did 1 shell.
I lightweighted the axe, I rebuilt the firing mechanism, I've tweaked this thing to death. I cannot get it to fire with 2 rounds. So I'm gonna make a little change I think will make it fire a lot better. So I put this piece of wood here so that the bat has something to push against.
That's cheating.
It's not cheating, it's how we make it work. Hopefully we'll let us set off 2 rounds, and then it'll also keep the ball from getting launched, and I think we'll get a much better slicing action.
Yeah, I think
should have
that
just done
looks
this from the
better.
beginning. I avoided it because
think
I
that eye
kind of thought it
position
was
looks
cheating
better.
too, but the rules are made up and none of it matters.
That's really fast.
Ching, like a guillotine. I wish it would have gone all the way through, but
Yeah.
I don't think it can. That blade isn't long enough.
Oh, there goes the stop rod screw.
Oh, and the stop rod too.
We'll have to inspect the bat. It looks like we broke a bunch of stuff, though. We got 1 good hit. What seems to have happened the second the axe hit the ball
can't
is that
really
the
see the
bat let out a
markings
small,
above my
inaudible
eyes on
whimper,
the
and
middle
then
one.
immediately broke. It bent the entire piston
At least
assembly
from
and
the front
semi-stripped
angle,
the
but
bolts.
this
That
is
didn't
more
go
of,
flying
like,
off.
kind of from
I
a
also
side
messed up the
angle.
firing pin assembly. I'm gonna have to take a rain check on hitting a tree, sadly. Let me know if you think that's worth doing. If there's enough interest, might come back and do it.
So, I mean, what do you think? Does the bat make a good axe?
I'd say that mystery's crunched.
That means it's bad?
Yeah.
So the axe I built totally sucked. It wouldn't fire without a lot of help, but I don't think that's fundamental. I think if you pitched the ball at it, it actually would set off pretty reliably.
Yeah, if you did that and had a longer blade, I think it would
I think
just
they
fruit
make me
ninja
look
right
too
through the baseball.
angry.
Which would be awesome. My brain is telling me that I've had enough
Well, I'm
axe
not
bat for a
angry.
lifetime, but my heart is saying it needs to see a ball fruit
I'm
ninja.
solving a
We
mystery
can
with
just
my
put a pin in it and
pals.
call it plausible for now.
Okay, fine. All right, hand stuff's here.
You realize it's a right hand and a left hand mold.
No. Why do hot dogs and buns come with different counts? Who makes these things? I actually think you'll be able to shove it in here upside down, and I don't think you'll even be able to tell.
So the bones are plastic, there's no tendons, there's no skin, but it's better than a banana.
3, 2, 1.
Whoa! Are you tired of leaving the house to exercise
What is this
your
crap?
dog?
Introducing Dogcercise. Give your dog the body they've always dreamed of. You'll get fit. Your spouse will get fit.
Order it now, or the dog gets it.
I can't decide
Excuse me?
how this hand should
Everyone,
fit. I'm gonna
please.
err on the side of maximum.
Everyone, please
3,
order it now.
2,
I
1.
don't want to get it.
Hey, buddy, you forgot your finger.
This is why the safety boy exists.
Ouch. Do you think your hand can really do that? Looks like something our dog would hack up.
Or you.
Oh, you want a finger? Mmm.
So this hand is still not quite as tough as my hands, but I think I have a pretty good idea of what would happen if I set it off on my hands. Would it totally wreck your hands, and how bad?
Confirmed.
Yes.
It'll wreck your hands. I think there's a chance they'd just be gone like I guessed.
Yeah, I agree. It's really not good for your health.
We should try to hit a golf ball. I mean, it's basically already a golf club.
I'm so into this idea. How far do you think it would go?
I think what would be a good hit for a professional golfer. Not like a record, but a good hit.
I tried to calculate this and I just have no idea. I'm gonna say 250. I just think we have to do it.
Let's find out.
Simply replace the bat face with a golf club face. Give it a compact muffler, and replace the bat handle with a golf club handle.
Yeah, what do you think about this club?
Looks like a submarine.
Submarine sandwich or a...
Both.
I don't know what's gonna happen, and I don't want to swing it until I've tested it. So I'm gonna take the hitting end of the golf club and put it back on the bat.
Yeah, I like how that looks more.
On the bat swing.
I don't look like I'm angry.
I should title this video, Magic Bat Will Only Fire If It's a Baseball. I tried all the tricks in the book. I can only get it to fire if I hit something else along with the ball, like the top of the tee.
We think the main problem is that the bat is too squishy and the ball is too springy. Nerds like my husband call this an impedance mismatch.
Sure do, and I'm proud of it. Because the piston wants to
I-
squish slowly and the ball wants to bounce quickly, the ball bounces away before the piston even really starts moving. You get terrible energy transfer. In other words, no boom. If you want to understand the impedance
tier
mismatch
3
better,
emote.
check out the video Destin from Smart Everyday made about the explosive bat. It goes more in depth into what's going on and is really good. I think it's time for me to do some hardcore engineering and fine tune the interface to get the impedance that I want.
He's gonna put tape on the club.
Still counts. The rubber tape I'm using is a nicely damping foam. The hope is that it'll keep the ball from bouncing away and also transfer more of the energy from the ball into the piston, kind of like a dead blow hammer. It's a little better, but still won't fire without help. Man, it's just not really doing what I was hoping it would do.
I think you just have to do it the right way.
Doing things the right way.
Yeah, and gradients
is
are a
just
pain
the
in the
worst.
butt too.
So I have an idea for a pretty big change to the club that I think would deal with all the known issues. The ball being too light, the ball bouncing way too fast, and one that we haven't really talked about, which is that if the club hits the ground before it hits the ball, it will fire. Who knows what will happen? It'll probably break the club, it'll launch the club backwards, really bad. So my idea is to make the firing pins float. It'll be super light, so the ball should have no problem crushing the primers, and it won't be able to bounce away before they fire. And then because the bottom edge can't set the club off, when I dig it into the ground, it won't fire. Finally, I designed something and it works on the first try. What do you think the odds are that someone will let me hit this at their driving range? Well, the reason I was calling ahead is it's pretty loud.
So what? It's just a golf club, bro.
It uses special charges. It can be...
Charges? What do you mean charges?
I mean, they're...
Like a gun or something, or what?
No, not really. It's more like a special nail gun.
Don't you want a shooting range?
It's not a gun. All right, well, I understand.
Yeah, it's probably the wrong place, buddy.
Yeah.
Well, that was a fail.
That was a no. I mean, it is scary, but it's not scary, you know? You don't put your hand in front of a golf club either, so it's basically the same thing.
True.
Let's try someone else. And so I was wondering if we'd be able to come by your range sometime.
Can
and
I
hit a few balls and just
can
see
I
how
use
far they
the
go.
Yeah, I think that would be interesting. Sure.
the eyedropper?
The one thing is that it is kind of loud.
Yeah, I mean, if it's after hours, I think that'd be fine.
All
Or
right.
the gradient?
Cool. Thank you.
Sure.
How do I select
Here's a
which
baseline
one
with
I
no shells.
change? There
It's
we go.
pitiful. It took me more tries than I care to admit to hit the sweet spot, but when I did, wow. I could see them going over the trees by eye. Even with yellow balls
Wait,
and my
how do
sharpest
I-
lens, I just lose them
Wait.
into the haze.
Oh, okay.
This is the most contrast I was able to
Okay,
get.
that's how I do it. I need eyedropper the color, and then I need to click on the box.
It's a good thing I came after hours because I eventually blew a seal, and you know what that sounds like.
Alright, it's a special club.
And a huge thanks to the Falls Village Golf Club for taking a chance on me. I can tell you from experience that most golf courses are not this accommodating. If you're a golfer in the Triangle area, check them out.
So you did all the hitting on this. Would you say it's a good golf club?
As a golf club, it's terrible. It's just...
It's a bit awkward.
It's just so heavy. I don't want a golfer to even hold this because they're just going to make fun of me.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you don't know anything about golf. Yeah, I know, but I know about engineering. When it connects with the ball, it turns me into Happy Gilmore. It hits the ball so well, it can't help but be a good club.
So that sounds confirmed.
If it were refined and lightened a little bit, you'd be the long drive champ. The thing that's bugging me, I'd like an actual number. I want more sig figs than really far. A golf radar would be perfect, but yeah. So if anyone knows where I could get access to a golf radar,
that's
just
a
let
really
me
good
know.
gradient.
So I've got all of this extra ballistic gel.
Why'd
which-
you miss
Why did you make
this?
so much?
Why?
I think we should get a skull and cast it in this gel and then hit it with the axe.
That's horrifying.
Really?
Why did the selection tool
I didn't really
miss
think about it
this
very hard.
little
Yeah,
bit
who
of
would do
white
that?
here?
That's
That's the same
messed up.
color as the white
I
around
don't know, I
it.
just overestimated, I guess. So we know that getting hit by the bat is really bad. It's life-changing.
Life-ending, potentially.
Probably, if you get hit right. What we're wondering now is, what if you get hit by a ball that got hit by the bat?
Yeah, it seems more likely to get hit by the ball. Just think about the poor pitcher.
Rest in peace. So we're gonna do this slightly unrealistic, but worst case situation of a pitcher getting hit at point blank range with a baseball.
Didn't
What do you think
miss
is gonna
anything
happen?
else, and I missed a little bit around the eyes.
Straight
but
through?
Yeah.
So you think the ball will just go straight through the pitcher?
Oh, wow.
I think it's gonna bounce off, and if it does, hit me in the face or break a window. I hope it goes through. That would be really cool. I don't know if you can hear that, but it doesn't sound exactly natural. Here it comes. Oh.
It's a cake.
So there's some risk of a ricochet off the gel. So I've got the bulletproof vest
oh
on
my
underneath.
God,
Here's a baseline with just
why'd
the
you
bat.
miss like
Not
these
that
edges
exciting.
around the
Let's see how one
around the
shot
eyes
compares.
and stuff?
But let's take a look at the videotape.
Videotape? This ain't no tape. Ow. That would hurt.
Apparently I didn't like the taste.
Get that ball out of my mouth.
So it looks like I was right, huh?
You said it was gonna go straight through. It was closer to not going in at all than going straight through.
Oh, I thought we were doing a over-under. It goes through it all or it bounces right off.
Everything beyond a bounce off, that ain't fair. We gotta write a contract next time.
You have to do 3 shells.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Turning up area scaling in the bucket should fix it.
Clean up an aisle
Okay.
4. That's really cool.
You would not want to get hit by this
Oof.
baseball. Man,
Yeah.
that's a lot worse than I was expecting.
You thought it would bounce right off.
Well, I don't know. I'm pretty confident in saying the bat is deadly.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
it's like getting hit by a cannonball or something. I think this just might be my greatest creation.
You know we have a daughter.
And I think there's still a lot of potential left. So if you have ideas on modifications or things that I should hit with it, let me know. I'd love to try. It's a lot of fun, except it's not. Don't do it. The thing highest up on my list is fixing the axe so that I can try to one-hit KO a small tree. You should stick around for the sponsor. We had a bit more fun with the bat. It's worth your while. If you think I earned it and you enjoyed this video, you should consider subscribing. It helps me out a lot and it'll keep you in the loop when I publish new stuff. If you'd like to support my videos directly, check out my Patreon. The final way you can help out is by checking out any sponsors. Thanks. I promise this will make sense in a second. I'm about to tell you about this video's sponsor, Keeps. So why am I talking about hair loss? I mean, if anything, I need a haircut. I know several guys who are dealing with hair loss, and it's a huge deal. The emotional toll that it puts guys through is really bad. And yes, men have emotions. So I looked into the research behind Keeps. As best I can tell, it's the real deal. There's only 2 FDA-approved hair loss treatments, and Keeps is low-cost generic versions of both of those. And I believe this has the potential to improve the hair loss situation for a lot of people. And that's a good thing for humanity. And when I say a lot of people, I mean it. 2 out of 3 men will have some form of male pattern baldness by the time they're 35, which is just crazy high. So to try to illustrate this point better, I made the hair lottery. You and I are represented by these ball bearings going through the Plinko board called life. And I have 3 men, and we're going to see how fate judges them. All right, how does it play out for gentleman number 1? Baldness. So not surprising.
Bald.
Remember, 2 out of 3.
Bald.
This hurts me more than it hurts you.
Bald.
Oh. So this isn't how hair loss traditionally works, but I think it illustrates the point pretty well. So he could try to use Keeps, but it wouldn't do anything for him because it's only effective when you still have hair. All right, let's see how the second man does. I guess he's the 1 out of 3. All right, time for man number 3. This is my stunt double. You can probably see the resemblance. He's really smart and uses Keeps. You can see how it's defending him from going bald. But that's no fun. We want to know what would have happened if he hadn't used Keeps. All right, I think they call this double jeopardy. Baldness. And that's no surprise because it's 2 out of 3. I hope you'll excuse me for having a little bit of fun here. I know baldness is a really serious issue for a lot of people, but if you are worried about hair loss, you should check out Keeps. It might be what you're looking for. They have online doctor consults, which are really easy, and they deliver it directly to your door every 3 months. If you're ready to do something to prevent hair loss, go to keeps.com/stuffmadehere or click on the link in the description to get 50% off your first order. That's keeps.com/stuffmadehere.
This is white. This is black. Why are you doing that? What the hell?
People are saying I'm lucky that my haircut robot didn't carve my face. That got me thinking, what if it did? And instead of my face, it was a pumpkin. Here's the plan. Take my haircutting robot and repurpose it with a new business end. For example, this spindle from a milling machine. I'm pretty sure I can use this to make traditional pumpkins by carving out chunks, as well as pro pumpkins by varying the depth of cut to control how light passes through the pumpkin. In theory, I should be able to take any image and carve it into a pumpkin. For example, a recreation of my wife glaring at me. We'll see if she thinks this is as funny as I do. I've seen people put a pumpkin into a CNC machine, which is hilarious. But I've never seen anyone make a custom-made machine to carve a pumpkin. Probably because it's a really dumb thing, but I love dumb stuff. If you haven't seen my haircut robot, I'll link the video here. It's basically a 5-axis CNC machine with a special end that can cut my hair. I'm going to remove the haircutting attachment and replace it with this milling spindle. But before that, there's just a couple issues to fix with the haircut robot. I'm going to make a few select modifications so that it can stand up to the rigors of CNC milling. So we barely even started and my master plan has already fallen apart. I got into the CAD and one thing led to another, and the only part left of the robot is the big circular bearing. Have you ever seen where someone finds a really old airplane underwater from World War II or something, and then they restore it, and it's all new parts except for like one piece from the original aircraft? This reminds me of that. I should also point out that this is an awful way to make a CNC machine. Even though I stiffened it up, this design is very floppy. It's not too late to build it another way. All right, let's just build it. I'm gonna reuse all the electronics, which is nice. Making this robot uses all the tools. It's got machining, 3D printing. This is a Form 3, it makes incredible parts. It's got lathe work, welding,
I have to make it a
laser
reference
cutting. This is new.
layer?
CNC routing with the always awesome 24R. You might be thinking this is some ancient religious symbol. It's actually a new giant gear for rotating the entire cutting head. As usual, there's lots of plasma cutting. The only problem is that my plasma cutter is broken.
Hey wife.
Yeah.
I have great news. I need to get another plasma cutter.
How many plasma cutters do you need?
There's
yeah, just one more. I know.
There's no gaps.
So
that's a thick ass line.
I can't even keep track of all your tools.
I'm gonna take that as yes. Oh, and I'm gonna need you to park your car in the driveway.
What?
Thanks.
I know just who to call. Hey Siri, ask Cormac if they'd like to work with me again.
Tormatch says sure.
If you follow my channel, you know that my plasma cutter is like my baby. And you might be wondering why I would replace my baby with someone else's baby. Well, their baby's better. It's called the Tormach 1300 PL, and it's hot off the presses. If you have no idea what a plasma cutter is, they are awesome. They make a high current arc of electricity between a torch and whatever you want to obliterate. Similar to a TIG welder, except there's a high speed flow of gas overlapping with the arc. This makes the gas super hot and ionized, which is why it's called a plasma cutter. The super hot gas coming out of the tip is like a juggernaut. Nothing can stop it. It cuts through steel like butter. I mainly use this to cut out sheet metal patterns that I bend and weld like origami to very quickly and cheaply make structures. So here's why their baby's better. It has ClearPath stepper motors, which are really good. These are what I used in my basketball robot. It uses PathPilot control, which is great. And it's the same software on all my other CNC machines. It has presets. This is so simple.
Why did nobody tell me about this?
And it isn't constantly broken. All I gotta do is get it horizontal, get the legs installed, and some side panels, connect up the electronics, and we're in business. It has this tray full of coolant which catches most of the metal smoke. You really don't want to breathe it. The blue coolant isn't the only thing that looks like a toilet. That's how you know it's working. Check out this sliding water table. It makes it possible to cut pipes and big stuff. I am so excited to have this in my arsenal. Now that that's built, let's make some pumpkins. All right, we finally have a pumpkin carving machine. It has all the degrees of freedom to move anywhere.
The hair
on the
looks
pumpkin,
terrible.
at least
I hate
in theory.
how I drew this hair.
The robot can't actually do anything yet. I have to write software for it. You are so useless right now.
Your mom is useless.
Making the robot is only a small part of the work. You can think of it as the appetizer. The real meat is the software. Here's the basic workflow that I'm going for. I'd like to be able to draw a picture, or maybe take a photo off the internet, and cut that into a random pumpkin. The rough plan is to put a pumpkin into the robot, measure where it is with a special tool in the robot, take the picture that I want and somehow map it onto the scanned pumpkin shape, then convert that into a series of moves that the robot will dutifully execute, with the result being my picture cut into the pumpkin. Let's talk about mapping a 2D image onto a pumpkin. There's actually no way to do this. Something has to give. I either have to fold the paper or stretch it.
I am far from the first person to run into this problem. In fact, it's been driving flat earthers and cartographers crazy for centuries, because the Earth is no oblate spheroid. What did you just call me? To solve my image wrapping problem, I'm going to steal a technique all the way back from 1569 called the Mercator projection. It's a way to unwrap a sphere onto a piece of paper or vice versa. It was invented for maps. This is good for this project because when you convert from paper to sphere, vertical lines will stay oriented to longitude lines, and horizontal lines will stay parallel to latitude lines. This isn't necessarily true for other ways of mapping spheres to planes, but it's important for my memes to look good. The main downside of Mercator is that things get squished at the poles because that's where all the longitude lines come together. Here's what the Earth looks like on a Mercator projection, and this is what the actual size of the land masses are. I'm okay with this because I plan to do most of my carving away from the poles of the pumpkin. Like many STEM topics, trying to read Wikipedia to understand a Mercator projection is a great way to feel inadequate. Maybe that's just me, I'm not sure. Here's how it works. Imagine that I put my sphere inside of a cylinder, and inside of my sphere there's a light shining out in all directions. If there's a little something on the surface of my sphere, the light will project it somehow onto the surface of my cylinder. The way I've drawn it, light will escape out the top, but if I make this infinitely long, it will capture all of the projections from the light. And then if I split this cylinder down the side and unrolled it, my map might look something like this. I could then squash it down to whatever map size I want, and I have a Mercator projection. That's basically how it works. So let's build it. I just don't get it. Why isn't this working? I've been banging on this Mercator projection code for hours. Something in the math is just not making any sense. All right, I found a hack to my problem, but it's nasty. What I'm doing is that's such a dirty hack, it should be illegal. All right, I can now wrap whatever picture I want around a sphere. The problem is that perfectly spherical pumpkins are incredibly rare. I have to find a way to deal with pumpkins and all their blobby imperfections. If I don't, the machine can't possibly cut in the right location or to the correct depth. This is where measuring the pumpkin comes into play. I made this special tool for the spindle which has a little switch on it. With this I can move towards the pumpkin until I see the switch trigger. That tells me that I hit the pumpkin. I pop this into the robot and probe every nook and cranny of the pumpkin. All you do is run tsa.exe.
Keep your hands where I can see them. Is that a bomb? You are a terrorist.
For every point that I probe, I record where the tip was, and then that collection of points gives me an estimate of the surface of the pumpkin. All right, we are almost there now, finally. I can now take any picture and wrap it onto a sphere, and I know where my pumpkin is and what shape it is. The tricky bit is how to take my image from the surface of the sphere to the surface of the pumpkin. What I do is pretend that the pumpkin is inside of a perfect sphere, and the center of the sphere is in the center of the pumpkin. For every point that I measured on the surface of the pumpkin, I project a ray out to the surface of the sphere and see where it hits the sphere. So what this tells me is that this point on the sphere corresponds to this point on the pumpkin, this point corresponds to this point, and so on. This gives me a way to convert from pumpkin space to sphere space. One other quick point. Imagine my pumpkin was really messed up and it had some tumor thing hanging off the side. This pumpkin will not work for the method that I just described, because if I project a ray out onto the surface of the sphere, I don't know if it came from here or here. It's ambiguous. Writing the code for all this is just describing to the computer in excruciating detail everything that I just explained. You'd think I'd be better at this by now. Congratulations, we can now wrap a meme around a pumpkin. The final boss step is turning this into a series of moves that the machine will obediently perform. If everything works out, the end result will be my wife's face carved into the pumpkin. There are easy and hard ways to generate these series of moves. When is Halloween? Yeah, we're going with the easy way. So remember, I want this robot to be able to do two things. Cut out shapes like old school pumpkins,
I don't know.
And cut lithophanes. The idea behind a lithophane is that you vary the thickness of a translucent material to get different colors. You can use this effect to get a lot more detail than you can by cutting out chunks because it has shades of gray. 50 wasn't quite enough for me, so I programmed it to have 254.
A little bit with some blackness.
Welcome to my kitchen. I'm going to be teaching you how to make tool paths. All you need is a pumpkin, the thing you're going to be cutting with, and whatever you'd like to cut onto the pumpkin. Start off by taking your desired image and mapping it onto the pumpkin. Then find the outlines of all the regions. After that, offset the edges in by the radius of the tool. This will ensure you cut the right shape.
It needs to be
like cut all the way to the edge, the part will be
halfway on top and then like halfway on the
back. Cut down the middle of it because it's better to have something than nothing. Then just make moves for the robot to go from one region to another, and you're ready to cut outlines. To cut a lithophane, simply fill each region with horizontal cuts. Then set the depth of each cut according to the color of the picture. And that's all there is to it. This is a recipe that the whole family is going to love because you're awesome.
All right, the robot's built, the software is done. Now it's time to have some fun.
Oh no.
Never mind.
So what happened is I had accidentally connected plus to
Love
minus
watching
and minus plus, and
VTubers
that
draw
fried
their own
everything.
models, helps
The
my
microcontroller, the
creativity in my
ICs,
own
it fried
art.
my laptop. That really
Well, I'm
set
glad-
me back.
I'm
But
glad
I
you
have
like
replaced everything. All right, it doesn't seem like anything happened. That's good. When it
I'm
seems
not-
like something happened,
I'm not
that's
confident
when you know
in
it's
my
bad. Okay. Now we can
artistic
get into the meat.
abilities.
Wow, everything worked on the first try. Yeah, I wish.
You've
But I'm
probably heard me talk
trying.
about integration hell before. It's when you try to put all the pieces together for a robot like this and nothing works. Yeah, I was in integration hell for quite a while. And I guess it fits really nicely with the Halloween theme. So let's start with a quick and easy
I don't
test.
know what to do with the horn on the back of the head.
Do anything fun this weekend? Oh, wow, cool.
I should probably turn that off. Cutting out chunks is no problem and works really well. This is a caricature of our daughter. She has 3 teeth and smiles just like this. That's cool,
You may
but I
not be
made this to make
confident, but seeing you
pumpkins that I
try
can't
makes me
make with
super
my own
happy.
hands.
Ah!
Hey, what'd you carve on your pumpkin? A pumpkin? I don't know why I like that so much. It's not really very funny.
Pretty cool, but I didn't cut deep enough, so it's harder to see than it should be.
Trying to cut this pumpkin has
That is
exposed
that
all
is
of
really
the software
stupid,
bugs.
but also very
I've
funny.
been trying to cut this
Carving
for like
a pumpkin
5
on a
hours.
pumpkin.
I'm not going to leave this basement until this pumpkin is cut.
You're an idiot. I ended up sleeping in the basement so I could monitor it while I was cutting. I wish I was kidding. All that, and it's still super hecked up. I don't know what the deal is. It should look like this. I wish I would have remembered the baby monitor before I slept in the basement. If we keep trying, we should succeed eventually, right?
This one definitely has that just put me out of my misery aesthetic.
Something is really wrong. Let's see how the wife lithophane does. All the software seems good, but this is still crap. Okay, I finally found a huge problem. This is supposed to be tight.
All right, took everything apart, put it back together. It's now
I
fixed.
don't know what to
That
do with
fix
this
did the
horn
trick,
on the
and I
other
carved a
side
few
of the
more
head here.
pumpkins, including a good lithophane
I feel like
of
it
my
needs
wife's
to
face.
be
She's going to
more
determine if these
front.
pumpkins are any good by rendering a verdict on a scale of 1 to 10. First up, portrait of our daughter.
10. No
10.
Or
question.
maybe I need to.
How about the pumpkin?
Maybe I need to flip
Like
it.
self-portrait.
A reflection on what it means to be a pumpkin.
3 to 4.
3. When's the last time you saw
Oh,
a pumpkin
Lord.
carved into a
What
pumpkin?
are those?
That's true.
I call this the huge waste of time.
The robot got loose.
It
It
looks
didn't run away,
cool.
but it got floppy.
7.
All right. This is
I
my
don't know
personal
why
favorite.
those are
That
there.
looked pretty messed up.
You look
Get
mad.
rid of
In
them.
terms of aesthetic appeal, I'd give it a 3. If
You
that,
don't think very
that's
highly of
generous.
yourself.
Hopefully that's not really me.
Wait till
Get
I
rid
upload the
of
photo.
them.
Looks just like you. Only when you're glaring at me, but that's exactly how it feels to look down those little pupils.
Hmm.
This one looks like that meme where they tried to restore that painting. The way I might describe this is it's just saying, kill me. You kind of look like the Girl Scout logo.
A 2.
Come on.
Maybe we're seeing different things. I'm seeing a profile.
I'm seeing an old shriveled head looking sideways,
6, 7, 8, 9,
saying,
10,
kill
12,
me.
13, 14, 15,
Alright, well,
It does look sadder now the more I'm looking at it.
well, the funny thing is these are all derived from your face.
Well, we all know the winner.
The big takeaway is that just because something's hard, it doesn't mean that it's good. I really want to see that crazy pattern working, so let's try again. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. It helps me out a lot and keeps you in the loop when there's new videos posted. If you'd like to support these projects directly and get behind the scenes info, check out my Patreon. And the last way you can help is to check out any sponsors. Now we're talking. I'm really happy with this result. Although I would like it to be a little cleaner. My guess is that this is a combination of using really cheap cutters and my machine not being stiff enough. I'll fix both next time.
It looks like.
Disregard the robot in the frame.
Did the
I'm gonna
carving
tell you
of his
about
wife's
today's
face
sponsor,
look like
Audible. Before
Jason
you
to
say,
anyone else?
sponsor,
Or maybe
and
I'm
get out
just
of here. Couple
maybe I'm
reasons
just
to stick
still
around.
thinking
One,
about Friday
I'm
the
going to be trying to
13th.
carve the promo code into this pumpkin. This is actually the first time I've ever tried to use this robot, and there's a good chance it's not going to work. So hopefully an interesting result. The other reason is Audible's awesome. I love it, and I think you're gonna love it too. It's a vast collection of audiobooks and other spoken word things. The great thing about it is I can learn while I'm doing other things. It's kind of like getting extra hours in your day because you get to get
Hello,
more out of
action,
every
enjoy the
hour.
alert.
If I were writing a business book, one of my keys to success would be Audible. Sorry, it looked like my robot was about to kill itself. I really love learning about how people did something, especially something hard. There's this book I was reading recently about the effort to make the atomic bomb. It has the really original title of The Making of the Atomic Bomb. It's an absolutely epic book. It goes into the science, the physicists, the politics. It's so good.
What if
There's
I
so many
flipped
takeaways from a book
this?
like this. You can learn so much from the past. The only problem is it's a really intimidating book. It's like a 50-hour book. But because I can listen to it when I'm in the shop or just doing whatever things where my brain is idle, it's great. All right, here it goes. We had a slight technical difficulty. I was cutting too deep, so it was cutting something though. Let's try again. Signing up for Audible gets you access to a gigantic library of titles. They call it their Plus library, as well as a credit every month for any book. Can you see the problem? It cut it backwards. You should try Audible. It's amazing. You'll get more hours in your day, and you can get a free month by going to audible.com/stuffmadehere or texting. I'm just kidding. You can text Stuff Made Here to 500-500. Let's go get this cleaned up and see how it looks.
Definitely some stuff to improve, but
I
I'm
think
happy.
I
You'll be happy
noticed
too if you go
this
get Audible. Get
too
your free
long.
trial at audible.com/stuffmadehere,
But that's that would require
or
a
listen
lot
to the
of
pumpkin and text
stuff,
Stuff Made Here to
so
500-500.
I'm just gonna leave it alone. It's fine.
No, I'm not locked out. I just want to see if you could break into my house. The deadbolt doesn't really have a brand. It's a stuff brand deadbolt, which I'm pretty sure you've never seen one of these before. I guess I should explain what's going on here. I designed and built what I think is an unpickable lock. Although for some reason, my wife doesn't share my unfounded confidence.
If you really want to convince people, you should have an expert try it.
You don't think I'm an expert?
No, I do. I just mean a real expert.
She's totally calling me out. And as an easily manipulated man, I just can't let that stand. So I found a locksmith and challenged them to break
Maybe
into
it should
my
be
house.
more like
I spent
that.
so much time on this lock, and I just
How does
needed
that
it to
look?
work. This was one of those unexpectedly difficult projects. I had to design some parts more than 10 times until I could get them reliable enough to have a locksmith go at it. We're gonna have to do some real work here to unpack this lock, because you need to understand how locks are picked, and to understand how locks
Maybe
are
it's
picked,
just
you need
because
to
it has
understand how
that
locks
bit-
work. So let's get into it.
That,
Imagine
like
I have a bar that I can
the
slide
gold
in and
ring
out of a
coming
slot.
out from the
This
side.
could be a deadbolt
So if
for a
I
house
hide,
or
if I
whatever.
make that
If I put a
not
pin through
visible,
both
it's
pieces,
better.
this bar is now locked. I can't move it. This is about the simplest possible lock. And this is a very insecure lock because all that I have to do is push this up, and then this green part, it's unlocked. If I split the pin into two pieces, I have to push on it the exact right amount so that this lines up with this. If I push it too far, then the lower piece jams the lock, and if I
So
don't
if I
push it
just
enough,
have
the upper
that-
piece jams the lock. And then a key for this
Yeah.
lock is just something with a little wedge that will
I guess
push
that looks
these
better.
up the correct amount so that it can slide past. Let's take that drawing into the third dimension, sort of. Here's how you unlock it with the key.
I still feel
I
like
also
you should
made a
be able
lockpick.
to see some of it.
So I also made a lock
From
pick.
this
All I have to do
side,
is slowly
though.
lift the pin upwards as I pull on the locked part, and it will just pop open when the pin is in the right
Because
spot.
my head isn't like
You can
my
now
head
pick
isn't
single pin two-dimensional
full
locks.
full
Lock
profile.
designers realized that one pin isn't quite enough. So what they said is, well, if you like one pin so much, how about 5? I'm using my Glowforge laser cutter to make these locks. It's awesome for quick prototyping. Lifting 5 pins simultaneously to the correct height is easy for a key. But if you think about it, picking a lock with 5 pins should be almost totally impossible. Imagine that I have a 5-letter
Whoa.
password that I need to guess. The number of combinations of letters is really high. In fact, if you do the math, it's about 12 million combinations.
I really
you have
feel
the
like
same
you should be able
problem
to
trying to
see
guess the
at
position
least
of the
part
pins
of
in a
it
lock.
from
What
this
it really
angle.
comes down to is that, just like us, locks live in the real world. And that means despite what they show in magazines, they have imperfections. If we zoom in on the pins inside of a lock, nothing fits perfectly and there's roughness and all kinds of issues. This creates a lot of ways for a pin to get stuck in the unlocked position. I could pull sideways on the lower part of this lock, then push up on the pins and get the red pin stuck on this little edge. If I can find a way to do this for every pin in the lock, then that's it, it's unlocked. This is equivalent to guessing a password 1 letter at a time. For each letter, you have a maximum of 26 options. At most, it'll take 130 guesses instead of 12 million. That is the essence of lockpicking. Break the problem
Maybe
down
it
into a series of
should
tractable
be
small problems.
that way.
The main difference between common locks and the one that I've made here is that they typically rotate a cylinder rather than sliding. Lock designers have come up with all kinds of tricks to make locks harder to pick. Some locks are so good they're almost impossible. But in the end, someone usually finds a way to set pins individually and pick the lock.
The key idea behind my lock is that it eliminates the ability to pick one pin at a time. You have to try all the combinations, which makes picking it intractable. Here's my conceptual idea for how to do that. You start with a normal lock with a normal key that sets all the pins to the correct height. Except this lock is somehow designed such that you cannot test if the pins are at the correct height until you do a few things. First, you somehow lock the pins in place so they can't drop if the key loses contact.
Should it actually be more like
Then
that?
you separate the key from the pins, which stay in place because they've been locked. And then this is very hand-wavy, but you insert some kind of barrier between the key and the pins.
Maybe that does
Then
look
you
better
test the
like
pins
that.
to see if they're set correctly.
And then
this
I
strategy
draw
leaves no
some
possible
hair
way to test
over
only
top of
one
this
pin at
one.
once, or to change your guess once the pins are being tested. You will be subject to all the possible combinations.
Yeah, I think that's...
Good luck, have fun.
I think I just
Conceptually, this
accidentally
lock
stumbled
is
upon...
really quite simple, but designing
what
a
looks
mechanism
better.
that I can actually make, it's a whole other story.
Looks better to me.
How do I lock the pins in place? How do I fit it into a normal size deadbolt? How do I make it resettable? Catching all the pins. So after protracted wailing and gnashing of teeth, here's the design that I finally came up with. As a point of reference, this has taken me about 3 times as long as moving basketball.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot going on in
That's
here.
That's what I've
take
been
it one
looking
piece at a
for.
time.
That
At
looks
the center
okay
of the
to
lock
me.
is this core that accepts the key.
It looks better.
And already we have a part that's essentially impossible to manufacture. Just look at the way that it cuts left and right, folks. He's certainly in a tight spot. Let's see how he handles this one. Mr. Stuff, breaking it up into manageable pieces. You cannot make this stuff up. I would love to know where he pulled that tool from. Looks like the perfect tool for the job. And it sounds like the crowd agrees. This little new addition to the mill is a Tormach Micro Arc. Contrary to what the name implies, it doesn't hold 2 of every little animal. It allows me to spin a part while I'm machining it. And I could not have made the parts for this lock without this thing. It's awesome. It uses a harmonic gearbox, which is like basically
now I
science
need to
fiction
adjust
technology.
these
I'm going to resist
rings.
digging into it for now, but
Because now it's
maybe
more of
someday,
like
'cause
a...
it's really cool.
Now it looks more
And
like
here's
of
where I
a front
reveal how my
view
magic trick
instead
really
of like a
works.
side. Yeah.
It mostly comes down
That's
to
what
this
I need
very
to do now.
complicated and hard to make part.
I
that
need to
holds
adjust the
core
rings
and some
around the
very
horns.
special pins. Putting the key in pushes these little pins
So
up.
you can
If I
so
take
you
another
can
pin
see like a little bit
and
of
put
a
it on
gap
top of the pin being pushed up,
where they
I can find a way
where they
to
wrap
freeze this
around, like,
pin
on here.
at whatever height the lower pin pushed it to. And then I can swing it sideways. Once it loses contact with the pin that pushed it up, there's no way for the key or a person trying to pick the lock to change its height. Then you can try to pass it through a gate that it only goes through if it's at the right height. So when you put it all together, all of the pins have to be set correctly, and there's no way to individually pick each pin. Kind of looks like a little pig, doesn't it? I've hand waved away this mechanism that locks the pins in place, but I think you're old enough for the truth now. This mechanism is the worst. So there's this bar right here that we push with the key. If we look at this from the top, you might think I could do something like this where I just push a little lock bar
That
over,
looks
which will hit
better.
each
That's
key
gonna
right
look
here
better.
and lock them in place. But this doesn't work. If things aren't the exact perfect size, it'll hit one pin before it hits another, and it'll never touch it. So this will not get locked. What I've been attempting to make is a system where each little finger that can lock a pin is floating on a spring. That way each one can individually compress different amounts. I can guarantee that they all make contact. This has been hard for a lot of reasons related to actuating it with a key, keeping things from binding up, dealing with grease and other things that change friction. I have made so many of these in different designs, both with flexural springs, with real springs, with all different kinds of ramp geometries, and it has been a huge pain. At this point, I still don't have it working reliably, but I'm gonna finish the rest of the lock so I can test the whole system.
How would you like it cut?
35,000 off the top, please.
Do anything fun this weekend?
I hung out with my son. He's a real chick off the old block.
Oh wow, cool.
Getting it shrouded and mounted on a door was actually surprisingly tricky because I have moving parts everywhere that want to interfere with the mount.
Yes.
Now it looks nice, but it still doesn't work. So it's 5 a.m. and no, I didn't get up early. Remember how I talked about remaking parts over and over again? I did that for 3 more days. I finally ran out of ways to do it wrong, and I cracked it. It's the first time I've ever tried it in the deadbolt. It's the smallest thing, but you would not believe how great it feels to see that deadbolt go in. It unlocked. There's just a little mechanism inside this that does exactly what it's designed to do. I just love it. I did try to pick it to make sure I wasn't missing something totally obvious, and as I expected, I couldn't do anything.
I've put off calling a locksmith as absolutely long as I can, but it's time for me to look fate in the face and see how they judge me. I found a locksmith that specializes in picking locks, and the first thing that they tried to do was to set the pins individually using a variety of different tools. It turns out they weren't able to set more than one pin at once, thanks to the pin locking mechanism, so unexpected bonus security feature. So with this first approach that they were using, they weren't close to picking the lock at all. They also tried a technique called bumping, and this is what I was most afraid of. It launches the pins upwards very hard and fast by hammering a special key into the lock, and I was afraid they'd be able to launch the pins and quickly rotate the cylinder and get them to land in the right spots and go through the gates, but they couldn't.
Just take a little bit off of there.
I don't think it'll work.
They gave it a solid effort and tried for quite a while. Eventually there was just nothing else to try.
Yeah, we tried.
Yeah, thank you for trying. And I'm not sure why I was so stressed about something that doesn't matter, but I really was. So, it's definitely resistant to the standard attacks.
Yeah, standard proof.
That bump key, it's just like watching them hit my child with a hammer.
Really? That's your baby.
I spent all this time raising my kid. I don't want to see them fail when it matters the most. You know what I mean?
I don't even know what to say to that.
I wouldn't say it's unpickable. I don't think there's enough evidence to say that. I think that it is a strong lock. I think that it is formidable.
You know who you should send it to? The lockpicking lawyer.
I would love to send it to the lockpicking lawyer. Let us know if you'd like to see that, and hopefully we can make it happen.
If you want us to send it to the lockpicking lawyer, don't bark.
Ah.
I would definitely make some upgrades for sending to him. More pins, more power, you know, all that stuff. One other thing that I wanted to point out is that this thing is not going to be important. It's not going to be commercially viable. The main value is just the educational aspects. The mechanical complexity just far outweighs any benefit. If you want to truly unpick a lock,
looks a lot
just get a lock
better
that doesn't
now,
have
I
a key.
think.
There's tons. So did you like my wife tracking trebuchet?
I appreciate the learning experience.
What did you learn?
I learned nothing, but hopefully our daughter learned something.
I built a robot to track and fire upon my wife as if she was a medieval target, thanks to this video's sponsor, KiwiCo. I love KiwiCo. They provide a service that I think is really important. I've mentioned before that so much that I know how to do, I learned outside of school. My parents gave me awesome help building
Welcome to the house.
This is one of the first complete models I did with no help. Doing these projects taught me so many skills, and it formed a solid foundation that I built so many of my other skills on top of. KiwiCo is awesome because every month they send you a crate with everything that you need to do a complete project start to finish. I've built and modified a number of these, and they're awesome projects. There's the main project, but then there's an entire magazine that goes into all the concepts behind the thing that you built, and then there's other projects that you can build with the pieces that came with the kit. I added a few off-the-shelf components to this and turned it into a wife tracking trebuchet. Hey wife, come check this out.
Hey, baby. Whoa.
You just call you Ken? Okay.
We're learning.
Learning what?
Learning this storm your castle.
Oh, wait.
Just remember, it's never too early
There's a
to
way
teach
I
your
can
children about
do that,
medieval
I think.
siege strategies. It's not all trebuchets. They have 8 different lines for different age groups and interests. I was really
can,
excited when I saw they have a line of crates
nicknames,
that's just a little bit more suitable for my daughter's age. So whether it's for a child, a relative, yourself, honestly, this is really fun to build. Give the gift of knowledge and skill. It's a long-term
Maybe I
investment
can't do
that
it
you're
for
not
this.
going to regret. Can you imagine
Alright.
the skill that you would build from
Can
doing these
it
crates
is.
every month for a year or two? I am so thankful to have been exposed to these kinds of kits growing up. If you go to kiwico.com/stuffmadehere, you'll get 50% off your first crate, and you'll also be supporting this channel. Although I'm not planning on selling any Stuff brand locks, you can still support this channel by subscribing, if you think I earned it, checking out my Patreon where you can support these projects directly, and get a behind the scenes view, as well as taking a minute to check out any sponsors. It helps me a lot and is much appreciated. I've been wanting to hit a ball further than the baseball distance
I don't think
record
it's
for quite a
something
while.
you
In
do.
another
I think
video,
it's
made
something
this
I have to do.
explosive
but I
bat,
don't-
which had all the right
I don't know,
ingredients to do
what
it.
that
It would
is
just
to set a
constantly break when I
nickname.
pushed it to higher powers. I was only able to reliably hit a ball about 350 feet, which is a major league home run, but it's not setting any records. That's just unacceptable.
Allow me to introduce Explosive Bat V2 and Explosive Bat V3, which is a double barrel 50 caliber baseball bat. It's powered by 27 caliber rifle blanks. I don't really see a reason why this wouldn't be regulation. This is the type of thing where you do it once and they make a rule just for you. This bat is insane. And for the first time, we're gonna get to see some awesome slow-mo of how it works. And finally, firing the wooden bat with 3 shells. So 575 feet. That's the longest verified home run. 575 feet is all the way out of the stadium. I've also decided that it only counts if I swing the bat for real. Going into this, I was thinking, oh, this is gonna be easy, but as I got into the math, it turns out 575 feet is really hard. The forces involved are insane. This is what happens to my wooden bat when you try to fire it with 3 shells. More on that later. I'm right up against the edge of what's possible.
Either way, your design knocked my socks off the moment I saw it. Oh, thank you. I'm glad you liked it.
And over and over. But through those fires and flames emerged something really cool. I'm not sure what to call it though. Explosive Bat V2 is such a mouthful. Let's just call it the 50. I like how that sounds. After my last bat video, about 200 million people said I should do 3 shells. So I know it's disappointing. Everyone wanted me to do 3 shells, but I didn't. I did 4, which is 1 more. So let me break down my plan for beating the record. So for step 1, I'm gonna hit the ball really, really hard. That's about it. I'm gonna need a much stronger bat. Oh, this is perfect. So like I said, this bat is gonna be powered by 27 caliber blanks. These are normally used for driving long nails into solid concrete and steel. I took this opportunity to totally rethink the bat. I've been obsessed with the idea of giving the bat just the tiniest tap and still hitting a home run. I call it the 4-gun salute. The entire end of the bat moves, and it has 4 individual firing mechanisms which actuate this 4-bar linkage. The force of the ball hitting the bat will fire all the shells. My new bat is so much easier to load than my old one. You just open the breech, load in your shells up to 4, which is pretty scary actually.
You know why?
And check this out.
I think I don't like the way the hair looks because
I'm so excited about this. All right, let's put it to the test.
It's in the front here,
I have my stand which lets me drop a ball onto a bat so I can
but
try
then
it
it's
out
in
without
front
putting myself
of
in danger.
The nose.
It was this exact moment I realized I majorly screwed up. This bat is so much worse than the
Around
last
this
one.
point, it should
Could
go
probably break
behind.
my wrists, which is a little scary. And check this out.
That's why.
I'm so not excited about this bat. It's too bad this thing is a complete piece of garbage because there's a lot of cool stuff to talk about if it had worked. I'm especially not going to get into the benefits of 4 separate firing mechanisms or the 12 iterations of the firing pins before I could finally get it to fire reliably. There's a really basic physics problem. For this to get launched up really fast and hard, there has to be an equal and opposite reaction forcing the handle down. This also generates a twisting force, which is what snapped the welds. And because my hands are also bolted to the bat, they'll also get twisted and snapped. That's a problem. I should have done more engineering analysis, but I just wanted it too much, and I thought maybe for once I'd be able to fool nature, but it never works. Good night, sweet prince. I started an entirely new design from the ground up. This is the way I should have done it from the beginning. And the basic idea is that I'm going to take a slice out of an aluminum bat and put this firing mechanism in there. And what will happen is when a baseball hits the top, this piece moves. It will fire the shells and then
that was part of the reason why I didn't like the way it looks. The other part is because
So here's what goes on inside the bat.
Just in general.
If we peel back the outer layer of the steel, it's
I don't
kind of
like
complicated looking. There's an assembly that can move like this. On this assembly, there's 2 firing pins here and here. And there's some blank cartridges down here. So when a ball comes in and hits this plate, this mechanism will move down and these firing pins will set off these cartridges, which will release a ton of gas, which will shoot down this tube and then up these 2 tubes. That'll shoot these up super fast because the pressure is really, really high, and that will send the ball flying. When this flying piston gets to about here, these rods will come into contact with these blue springs. They're super, super stiff springs, and then they'll start to compress them, which will slow this piston down so that it doesn't shoot out. I'm just gonna give you a little taste of what it was like to make this. It was pretty intense, a lot of machining. Almost everything was machined, which means lots of tools, some of which gave me some really annoying problems. This is the most complicated part, the chamber. The pistons are a very precise fit, as is the seal on the bottom that connects the chambers. Probably 90% of the time on this project was machining parts. It just feels morally wrong to be doing this to a bat. Kind of felt good too though. This is how I mount everything to the bat with these welded on caps. I had some heat treated parts because they need to be very hard so they don't deform. There's the firing pins. Hopefully you can now go make my bat, except don't. I think it goes without saying, but don't try this at home. I know I sometimes pretend to be careless for laughs, but this is really serious business. I do an enormous amount of precautions, from engineering analysis to testing to wearing body armor. And it's no joke, doing this could kill you. So just live vicariously through me and don't do it. All right, let's give it a shot.
I do not like the way it looks at all.
So this is exactly what I was afraid was going to happen. It blew the piston out of the bat, and it also broke the test stand.
Part of me just wants to completely redo the hair.
What noise? This is a good point to talk about the hard parts of this design. There were two really big, really important problems to get right. The first and most important was, how do I keep this thing from exploding in my face from the extreme pressures of detonating these cartridges? This is particularly important because I plan on holding this bat. Surviving these insane pressures is one of the reasons I have two smaller bores instead of one big one. You can think about the pressure and the bores pushing out in every direction. And the worst thing that the pressure does is it tries to split this in half. So you think of all the pressure acting along this surface, it adds up to trying to pull the whole thing apart. So the material's having to pull itself together to keep it from getting ripped apart. And as this hole gets bigger, the forces trying to rip the material in half also get bigger. And the only way I can make it not go pop as I do that is to make these walls thicker and thicker. So I want the holes to be smaller, but the problem is as the holes get smaller, the force pushing the pistons out also gets smaller. So it's a very delicate balancing act to go as small as I can while still getting the acceleration and force to launch the ball that I need. By the way, this phenomena of ripping the material apart is called hoop stress. And it's the main thing that sets the thickness of propane tanks and pipes and stuff like that. Having two bores also keeps things from twisting, and it distributes the force so the pushing plate can be wider without bending. The second big challenge with this bat is that the moving end will be going up to 200 miles per hour if it works. And my preference is to not shoot it out with the ball, so I have to stop it with stop rods, which compress these really stiff springs at the end of travel. And the force generated by this is unreal. So for my bat, the forces are going to be up to 6,000 pounds to stop the piston. And it's all going to go straight into these stop rods and springs.
See, the hair in my model
That's almost the combined weight of
goes
both my
out
cars.
and
that's normally what you apply to a steel rod when you snap it in half. I think these stop rods broke because I used a higher carbon steel, which hardened when I welded it. I made some with better steel. Let's try them. Looks good. Let's try 2 shells. Welcome to hell. Let me make things lighter, which will reduce the force. That made things worse. Let's try forged rods. Oops, I didn't realize my dog was down here. Also, they didn't work. Let's try different springs. Hey, something different. We didn't just break the rods, I also broke the bat.
There, a
I've
bolt,
got better
bolt
welds,
cut. Perfect.
better springs, high-grade steel, indestructible stops.
Beautiful.
Oh, finally. This thing has so much power, I love it. Here's the knife edge that I'm walking. I need these pistons to accelerate for as long as possible.
Stupid.
The longer they accelerate, the faster they go. As soon as they hit the springs, they start slowing down, and that sets the top speed. I want the springs to be as short as possible so I get the maximum travel before I begin braking. But if the springs are too short, then my deceleration will be very harsh, which will snap the stop rods. This is why the ball goes faster when the stop rods break.
Hang on,
There's no springs to slow it down, so it gets to accelerate longer. Have you ever wondered how to touch your wrist with all 10 fingers at the same time? It's really easy. Just have the bat go off while you're pushing like this. Here's what I came up with to keep my fingers safe. I've got the pusher. If the system blows, there's no appendages in the path, and there's no loops around my fingers to deglove them. If you don't know what degloving is, don't look it up. Even more important is this clip-on safety. Amongst friends, it's referred to as the safety boy. It clips onto the pistons and completely blocks the firing pins. It stays in the bat until it's ready to be used. That way, if you drop the bat or something, nothing happens.
I could just
keep my fingers pointing the right way.
Instead of trying to make my hair
And I'm a bit worried about
I
the
could
kick.
just
And
try
look
to
at how it's
emulate
slamming
Daphne's.
wood. But I don't know how I'm going to get more information than I already have, so I'm just going to go for it. I'm not scared. I mean, seriously, what do I have to be scared of?
Because me in
I'm
this
not
picture is
scared.
going to be based on
Why would I be
Daphne, so I
scared?
could just
Totally fine.
like
It's a little cold
draw
down
over
here.
Daphne's hair.
Oh, wow. This bat feels awesome. There's very little kick, actually. It looks like I'm getting about 75 to 100 miles per hour off the tee with one shell.
Make my head
which is a real
bigger,
improvement over the
and then
previous one.
draw Daphne's hair on my
Did you
head
notice it's super quiet?
instead of trying to do
All
my
the
hair.
exhaust gas comes out of these ports on the side of the chamber and gets routed to the top of the bat through the support bracket.
Because that's
also the
ultimately
gas
what
manifold.
this picture
The
is
top
going to
of the
be. It's
bat
going to
is
be me and
packed
my
with stainless
friends
steel wool.
as the
If I made it out
Scooby-Doo
of regular
kid.
steel wool, it would probably catch on fire.
So like I'm gonna
I kinda wish it
give
was louder.
I'm gonna
No
give
exhaust sounds
Leg
like this.
Velma hair. I'm gonna give
You
Booth shaggy
not
hair.
smile. All right, let's
Barry's
see how far we
gonna
can
be
hit
a
outside.
dog.
Looks like I'm getting about 300 feet off one
Miss
cartridge.
Jackie's gonna have Fred's
Let's see how two
hair.
does. That was a terrible
yeah.
hit, and that was really loud. Sounded like a gun. That sound was the dying breath at the breech. The breech is a piece of steel that sits behind the shells, and it keeps them from popping out of the chamber when you fire them. The pressure of firing them wants to shoot them out really hard. And I didn't feel like properly designing this part, so I did the old engineering trick of just making it out of fixed steel. And that usually works. This is the first time that's ever failed me. So to fit any more steel in here, I'm gonna have to redesign and remake this top end. I hate doing things the right way, but there's no way it's gonna survive at 3 and 4 shells if I don't do this. All right, new design for the top piece made and machined. It lets me have a solid 1/2-inch steel
Barry will
breech.
have Scooby's
I did my
hair.
homework this time, and this should definitely
Exactly.
probably not bend. It is now 5 a.m., and this is the only time I can attempt a 500 or 600 foot hit at this field because I don't want to worry about 600 foot foul balls and people. So this totally sucks. I take one hit and the bat broke. It was also the wimpiest hit ever. It went like 10 feet. I think you see the ball right there. Oh man, the damage is worse than I thought. So here's what I think happened. A ball came in and just barely hit the corner or edge or something, which was enough to fire the system. As the system started moving, it just kind of pushed the ball to the side, and then it was free to shoot out like a rocket. This made it slam into the stop springs much harder. So they were pulling down super hard this way, which bent it into this very annoying potato chip shape. I would really strongly prefer it not bend in half like this whenever I have a bad hit, so that means I get to redesign and rebuild the top end again. I think you know the drill at this point. I've made so many of these. Overall, I've made more than 100 custom machine parts for these bats. I hope I can get this working, because it would be a huge waste of time.
Rename
Although, let's
all
be
my
real, it's
layers.
a waste of time anyway. All right, we're going all the way to 4 shells just to see what happens. 1 shell, piece of cake as always. Here's 2, looking good. I haven't done 3 yet because it keeps breaking. But it's surviving many times in a row. This is fantastic. Now 4.
Oh my gosh, look at all
Gosh.
that. Look at all my
The power is
scribbles and
unbelievable. But unfortunately, yeah, it broke. But just look at that kick. Oh man, I really want to fire this. 4 shells shattered my grade 12.9 bolts, which is good. That means I'm getting a lot more force than I thought I was. Where did the screw heads go? Found them. Man, those must have gone flying. And then I had kind of a big brain moment, which is I'm putting all this effort into making these stop rods not break, but the stop rods can't break if there are no stop rods, right? All right, it's time to pull out all the stops. This bypasses the muffler and makes it so much more satisfying to use.
That layer.
A good
Okay, so
friend
we
is
want
letting me use
all
his
of these
property, and this is
layers.
really important because of the whole no stop rod situation. I'd prefer the piston not go flying 600 feet, so I've tied it to this bucket with Kevlar line.
Need to
It's
make
like a little
them
parachute.
bigger.
Here's how far the ball goes without any charges.
Try and like line it up with
So we did a little
Daphne's
horsing
face
around
a
with one
little
shell,
bit.
and then we gave it 3.
That was pretty good.
Yeah, you can say that again.
That was pretty good. So they're claiming the ball went all the way over the trees into the neighbor's yard, which is incredible. There it is. 708 feet.
But it only counts if I swing it, so time to get suited up and give it a whack.
Foul ball. The foul ball was actually my piston flying into the woods. So you know what that means. I get to remake it. 710 feet is incredible, and it totally obliterated Babe Ruth's record, and it made me realize I'm really close to breaking another record.
Enjoy the alert.
There are these guys down in Alabama, I think. Some guy named
Welcome
Dusty
back,
or something. They made this bat spinning machine that was hitting the ball, they say, 720 feet. I think I can beat that if I can tune the system. The problem I'm having is I can't see what's going on, and...
We've been planning this for weeks, dude.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Let's go do it.
This is like holding a Ferrari.
Well, let's combine our powers, and let's just do awesome things.
So we're using Destin's high-speed camera to figure out what's actually going on, and then use that knowledge to do even more awesome things.
Enjoy your leg lurk. Your leg lurk. Enjoy your lurk
like
leg.
Cheap Chinese fireworks is what that smells like.
All right, the first real hit. Really cool. You can see the stop springs bouncing, and this is not how I expected the ball to interact with the bat. It's more like launching it. So a normal collision is like 500 microseconds or something. This is
3.5 milliseconds of contact.
It's an eternity.
There are organisms that lived and died in that amount of time.
The thing I was most excited to see was 4 shells destroying everything. That was really cool, but where was the destruction? Oh, there it is. Destroyed the stop springs. I know where to get some destruction. Let's hit the wooden bat. 3, 2, 1. Wait. We gave another countdown.
Oh my gosh, dude, come on, dude.
Stuck.
All right. Oh, golly.
It's like by a thread. 3, 2, 1.
Okay.
1. Okay. I am so glad I didn't try swinging this bat with 3 shells.
That's the first time you fired 3 in the back?
Yeah.
Really?
That's why I didn't fire 3 in the back, so I had a good feeling this is what was going to happen.
Can I steal the
this
taffy
video is
from
already too
Lake's
long
pocket?
for me to get into the weeds of all the stuff we
mind.
saw and everything we learned, but a lot of cool stuff. Destin is going to be
Lake
making a video
might.
going more into the weeds that I'm just glossing over here. So you should check it out on Smarter Every Day if you are one of the 3 people who doesn't know what that is. He's diving into the details of what happens when a ball hits the
Hello,
bat.
Bear.
It's not really
Welcome
a
in.
bounce.
How you
It's
doing?
weird. When I first met Destin, it just did not compute. I was like, how can someone be this nice and cool? Something's off here. What is he really up to? But it turns out that's just how he really is. So go check out his stuff and you're not going to regret it. The last thing I really wanted to see is 4 shells with no stops.
Whoa, dude.
That's pretty cool.
My people have called me.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
We're out here trying to beat Babe Ruth's record and Destin's record by hand. It is difficult because I am not very good at swinging a bat, which the high speed makes extremely clear.
I think the technical term for this is loft. Have you heard of that term?
No.
It stands for, watch, I'll show you right here, which stands for lack of freaking talent.
Oh, yeah, okay. Makes sense. Oh, my goodness. I'm terrified of this thing.
I am too. Mostly because I know the guy that made it.
Because you know it's gonna crush your record.
I'm tired. I'm ready for a nice night of watching friends stream. Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Am I fine with getting fan art of my character? I want to make sure before I do anything. Yes, always.
We got a couple
I
alright
will
hits.
Always appreciate when people.
Then we got this hit.
Want to draw fan art?
Flew forever. And then this quad was about 50 milliseconds from getting completely pulverized, which would have been awesome. The control system on these quads is just unbelievable. How this didn't crash is just spectacular. So this hit looked amazing. It was flying over the trees. It looked at least as good as the other 700 footer. Unfortunately, we don't have a camera behind me because Destin was too busy trying to crash my quad and dealing with the high speed, and I was too busy trying not to die. We did see where it went. The only problem is it landed in this field. This is like finding a spherical needle in the world's largest haystack. I searched with the quad. I searched on foot. I searched for hours, and I thought for sure this was it. That's some stupid mushroom. If the bat was still working, I would destroy this mushroom. Been out here for 3-4 hours. This is the ball that's just not meant to be found. I'm 99% sure I broke Babe Ruth's record because it went over the road, which is right at the record line. But did I beat Destin? I just don't know. It's bugging me.
You can come to Alabama. Would you consider that?
If we can fire the,
Just had a new sketch of your PNG done? Oh, cool.
At it.
Well, yeah, duh. What were you, I mean, like, what were you even talking about?
I mean, just think about it. Mad Batter.
This?
Plus this, plus supersonic baseball cannon.
All at the same time? Yeah, we should do that. What happened?
We italicized it.
Oh, dude. So we have the letter pi now.
Yeah.
Are we done?
Unless we can find the other one. I just realized that this would be so easy to turn into a golf club. Let me know if you think that'd be worth doing. These videos are very costly to make and take an enormous amount of time. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. It really helps me out, and it also helps you out because you'll be in the loop when I post new stuff. If you'd like to support these videos directly, you can check out my Patreon. And the final way you can help out is by checking out any video sponsors. Here's the part where I tell you about this video sponsor, KiwiCo. I think a lot of you are gonna actually really like this. It's a good thing. The number one question I get asked is, where did I learn to do all the things required to build my projects? And my answer kind of surprises people because I think they expect me to tell them what college I went to. The truth is, a lot of what I know how to do, most of it I learned outside of school. And in fact, it started when I was about 4 years old or so. My dad is awesome, and he gave me all kinds of opportunities to get my hands dirty and build things and make things. For example, when I was 5, he gave me this kit, which is just some components and a board and a soldering iron, and he said, go to town and make it. And then he left me alone in the garage. I think he remembers a bit more supervision, but nah. And these were incredibly formative experiences that gave me confidence and abilities to then make more and more complicated things as I got older. I was even making videos about them. This is my energy efficient house proposal from, I think, the 3rd grade. I think my video skills have gotten better, but you can be the judge. KiwiCo is a service that sends you a project crate every month with everything that you need to make it. It's like a steady drip of self-directed hands-on learning. So what I'm about to tell you may shock you. I have a kid, a daughter to be exact. She's still a little bit young for the hydraulic claw, but I think she could be there any day. What do you think will happen if I put the big syringe in instead of the little one? Exactly. Maybe she's not into mechanical engineering. That's fine. There's 8 different lines for different age groups and interests. Not only are the instructions top-notch, but there's an entire magazine made for every single project that breaks down what's going on, it draws connections to the real world, and then there's a bunch of different projects like building a hydraulic elevator. The fact that you have all the pieces to build other projects is so cool. I attached my welder to the end of this arm and I almost welded. Awesome. Can you imagine the amount of skill you would develop from a couple years of building projects like this every month? And the world needs more scientists and engineers and just people who know how to get their hands dirty and make and fix things. I can tell you from experience, the best thing you can do to expand your kid's mind and get them comfortable with technology is to give them hands-on learning with kits like these. So whether it's for your kids,
if I turn the area scanning up,
give the gift of knowledge and bask in the joy of knowing you gave a gift that
it like overtakes the detail.
And leave a mark.
I'm super grateful to have been
exposed to this
it
type
leaves
of
all
stuff
these white
growing
spots.
Up. Go to kiwico.com/stuffmadehere and you'll get 50% off your first crate. And don't forget, the holiday season is this close, and these make really good gifts. Not only do they not rot the brain, it keeps giving all year long, so that's pretty cool. If you do this, you can also feel good because it helps support me and the channel, and it enables me to build increasingly bizarre and insane things. So thank you for that. I've made 2 basketball hoops that seriously improve your game. They're fun, but they both have this fatal flaw. The ball doesn't go in if you entirely miss the hoop. And I mean, come on, it's 2020. I shouldn't have to be good at anything. So the problem is that the ball is over here.
Wish they had this one, that when I was, the kiwi crates, yeah.
To where the ball is going. So that even if you miss entirely, it's gonna go in. Even if you shoot blindfolded. Heck, blindfolded backwards in the dark. Doesn't matter. And like my previous hoop, there's unlimited opportunities to torment my wife. Alright, here's my game plan. I'm going to point this Kinect, which is a 3D sensing camera, at this giant wall. I'm going to write software that will track whenever I throw a ball, and it will figure out where the ball is going to hit on the wall. I'm going to build a basketball hoop that I can move wherever the ball is going to go. And it's going to do all of that between the time the ball leaves my hand and strikes the wall. I know I say this every time, but this was a really hard project. It just did not want to work. Everything that could break, broke. It just really was a lot harder than I was anticipating. Oh my gosh. How I intend this all to come together will be a lot easier to explain with the actual hoop, so let's get it made. There are tons of plasma cut and folded sheet metal parts on this machine. It's just so easy and fast.
Where'd the rest of my drawing go?
That's half of the rail for the x-axis. These are how I make one long carbon fiber rod out of two.
Oh, is it because the hair? Oh, it's because
all the wheels and pulleys are printed on a Form 3. These are composite pulleys, so the part that needs to be strong is machined, and then the rest is 3D printed.
What'd I do?
French pleat is awesome. You can rearrange your shop in just a few minutes. Tormach 24R coming in handy. Normally 2 rails this far apart would be what you do when you hate yourself, but my mounts are spring-loaded, so alignment isn't very critical. It is not supposed to do that. Or that. The system was having a tough day. This thing is gigantic. It looked so much smaller on the computer. It's also kind of a weird design. Like my dog, it's designed for one thing and one thing only: speed. The design is optimized so the minimum amount of stuff moves and it's as light as possible. I'll be making an extremely light composite backboard and hoop, which will be mounted on this ridiculously over-engineered super light frame, which is on these incredibly light carbon fiber tubes, which are driven by belts from these extremely heavy but stationary motors. Here's a really quick demo to give you an intuitive feel for why this matters. I built this little cart. It has bearings, so very low friction. It's going to be pulled by a constant force.
Okay, so I need to cut the hair into 2 separate.
Here's the cart with 5 pounds on it, and here's the cart with 20 pounds on it. This is why lighter is so much better for the system. This little cart is also the world's best banana peel. Hey, come check this out. Shit. Oh no, watch out! These motors I'm using have incredible torque, which means they can yank on these belts super hard and super fast, which is going to accelerate the hoop like a bullet. And things are probably going to get pretty violent. I'm really worried about breaking a belt, especially this one that I spliced together like a total noob. I just couldn't get one long enough. There's another interesting complication on this robot, which is tilting the hoop. And you might be wondering, why do I need to tilt the hoop? I can move it anywhere on the wall. Shouldn't I be able to direct any shot in? I actually can't. There's a variety of shots that won't go in no matter where I place the hoop. If I throw the ball really hard at the hoop, it's not going to fall down into the hoop. If I want the line drive to go into the hoop, I need to tilt it down so that it directs the ball down into the hoop. Getting the system to tilt is responsible for a lot of these ugly belts. The reason I have all these belts is to keep my pants up. Otherwise they'll fall down and... What in the world am I
But
needing?
I have so many cables on my desk now. I really need to clean up my cable situation.
The real reason I have all these belts is because I need the motors to be stationary. They're way too heavy to move around quickly. So I'm transferring all their power with belts. To move the hoop, I have one continuous belt. This is the really long one that's just waiting to explode in my face. It's interesting because the final position of the cart is a combination of the position of both motors. For example, if I want to move the cart to the right, I rotate both motors in opposite directions. The backboard has 2 belts attached to it, one at the top and one at the bottom. To make it tilt, you pull on one of them and push on the other. The tilt motor follows this T-shaped path and connects to the second motor up top. The tricky thing about this arrangement is that the angle of the hoop is coupled to the position of the cart. If I pull the cart up, the hoop points down.
I've been trying to
and if I pull the cart down, the hoop
motion
points up.
settings so it
And
tracks
if I
my
take things too far,
arms
stuff's gonna break.
Better
if I move
for
the
my
tilt
3D
motor,
model.
it tilts. And if I move the position motors,
But I just have
it also
I have
tilts.
so many cables
so
on
what
my
I have
desk
to do is
now. I
drive
really
them
need to
together
clean them up. I
in
bought
the same
some
direction, and it
cable
won't
management.
tilt. If I want it to
sleeves.
tilt, I'll basically drive the
They're
belts
like
different
cloth
amounts,
sleeves
and
that have
then
a zipper
that'll
on
give
them.
me a resulting tilt.
So
Having
you can
all
put
3 motor
all your
positions coupled
cables
in this
in
way
there.
is a bit annoying, but
And, like,
it allows me
clean
to
up
build
the
the
mess a little
system
bit, so I
in a
need to
very
do that.
light way. Figuring out how to rotate the motors isn't as bad as you might think. You can write it all out as a pretty simple system of linear equations, and then you can write that as a matrix and solve it directly without any equation manipulation. If you're wondering why you might want to know linear algebra, this is one of the very useful applications of it. There's some other pretty cool things about this design. Every pulley and idler is 3D printed, I didn't buy any. Most of the construction is sheet metal, which is really fast to make. The sliding frame is stiffened by these tension steel cables. They make it several thousand times stiffer than it would be without them. I have these spring-loaded followers so I don't have to line the rails precisely, and a bunch of stuff I just don't have time to get into. The ball tracking software works in a similar way to my previous hoop. If you want to see how it works, you can check out the previous video. I did rewrite it to fix some of the bigger issues, and it did take me several days of straight programming. Too bad it makes for boring video. Alright, it's got my software on here. It's draft 1. Gonna give it just a 5mm move to make sure everything's working. Let's try again. Oh.
Heck? Why can't I delete it?
The belt was a bit loose because I was afraid of breaking my terrible splice, and that let it jump off the pulley.
Okay.
Everything's back together.
And this will be hair.
Let's try the 5mm move again.
Back.
Exactly what I was afraid was going to happen just happened. The belt ripped apart where I stitched it together. Hopefully I can make one that will survive. Otherwise, totally hosed. Alright, it only took me 7 tries. I'm getting pretty good at this. I was in integration hell fixing all of the software and mechanical system issues for a long time. For days. There were a lot of problems. The wounds are still fresh, so we're going to just kind of gloss over this. We're especially not going to talk about how the cart would follow an L shape rather than a diagonal line, and how I walked over 8 miles in my own house going up and down the stairs trying to fix it. It's done, and that's all that matters. It took quite a while to get here, but let's just move it to see if it works. Looks good enough to me.
Now this is another.
I'm going to sleep.
Okay, that needs to
really
go
late.
there. Actually,
I want to test the system out for real throwing balls, but there's this tricky problem, which is that the Kinect, which is the 3D camera, it's mounted up here. It's looking out at the hoop in the room, but it doesn't actually know which way is up, or how it's angled, or where the wall is, or where the hoop is. All it tells me is that this point in the picture is this far from the camera. To predict where the ball is going to go and where to move the hoop, I have to know where the Kinect is relative to everything. To deal with this issue, I made a calibration program. It takes an image from the Kinect. This represents how far everything it sees is from the camera.
Okay, now that I'm out of hell, just want to say that your model is fucking sick. Like, goddamn, that's a cool model. Oh, thank you very much.
Center of the backboard base is.
I'm glad you.
So now the hoop knows where the Kinect is relative to the wall, and everything's gonna be very accurate. I wrote this program to avoid measuring everything by hand, which probably would have taken about 2 hours maybe. This took a whole day, so the big question is if this is worth it or not. Oh, come on. Is that even a question?
No.
All right, it's time to test it out.
Okay.
It says it hit there, which it did.
Okay, that,
so why no
the
moving?
hair back needs to be.
I think I hear it moving. It's moving. Really
yeah, layers, because I'm trying to.
All right, my calibration thought that a millimeter was a meter, and that the world was upside down, and a few other things that happen when you write code like this, but I think I have it all sorted now.
Front and back. Sweet. The layers go by top layer to bottom.
How cool is that?
So the horn.
Seeing this thing intercept the ball is like the best feeling ever.
The
but it's only half the system. I still need a backboard that can tilt with a rim on it.
So the horn,
I've been
the
testing
hair,
without it
the head, and
the
then
way
the
the belts interact, I didn't want to be crashing all the time with the hoop, so I've just put off making it. Let's get that made and then take it to the next level. I'm making it out of super light fiberglass and foam. I machined the backboard core on my Tormach 24R. It makes it really easy to get these inserts in the right spots.
Yeah, and that's where I want the horn. I want the back horn on top of
this backboard
the hair.
Turned out awesome. It's foam core with fiberglass reinforcement. That makes it really, really stiff but light. The reason I made this aluminum rim is that the stock one is incredibly heavy steel, and this is about 4 to 5 times lighter than the backboard plus rim. Here we go. Boom! If that isn't the coolest thing you've ever seen, wow.
This thing is so much fun. I've got to have my wife try this out. Hey, wife.
All right, here to be pranked.
Why would I prank you?
Yeah. Is the net supposed to be like that?
Oh, yeah. I get it.
I'm just checking out who is live right now that we might be go rating soon.
All right, give it a shot. That definitely had to be a fluke.
Kobe.
All right, my turn.
Wow, you play like a nerd. Must be an engineer.
I also got you this.
Okay.
Ah, it all makes sense
So that's
now.
good.
So it's doing the cross product.
Yeah, that's basically what does it.
We have
I
a
thought
little
she
bit
liked
of
programming.
touching up to do.
You know what?
Oh,
Even
oops.
losing this hoop is a pleasure.
Didn't mean
now
to
I
press
can
that
really
button.
make it rain. This hoop is so cool. It is really satisfying to see it working. For a while there, I thought it wasn't gonna work. Sometimes it just does completely the wrong thing. It sometimes thinks my head is a ball. I need to look into the code because my optimizer keeps trying to swish the shot rather than bounce it off the backboard, which isn't the best strategy because it's more sensitive to error in my estimated trajectory. In other words, it hits the rim. Backwards, blindfolded, in the dark. For my next video, I'm planning to make the next version of this bat. I really want to break the record. And I have a metal bat, which should help me withstand the stresses. And I talked a lot about powering it with 3 shells, but then I realized I have 4 shells, so why not just 4? It's 1 more. Should be really good. Twice as powerful as before, so that's the plan. If you like what I do, you should consider subscribing. It helps me out, and it also helps you out because you'll get notified when I have new videos like this bat. The other way you can help out is by checking out any sponsors I have on the videos, if I have any. So I was looking at my head, and it reminded me of the sponsor of today's video, Keeps. You may think my haircut robot's your only risk of hair loss, but
What did I
you'd be
just
wrong.
do? Hang on.
I'm not going bald. Me either. Well, the stats would really beg to differ. 2 out of the 3 of us will probably have some hair loss by the time we're 35. What? Then what are we gonna do? The best thing to do is get ahead of the problem while you still have hair. Aren't the treatments super expensive? I spent all my money on tools. Well, you're in luck because Keeps offers generic versions of the only 2 FDA-approved hair loss treatments. So
Hang on,
even if you spent all your money on tools,
messed up
you can still afford
my
it.
chat.
It's also super easy to get. You can visit a doctor online and they'll mail it directly to your house. So there's this old saying that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of hair. At least I think that's how it goes. My point is that it's a lot easier to prevent hair loss while you still have hair. And it can take 4 to 6 months for Keeps to start showing results.
Okay,
so
fixed.
you should act now while you've still got some hairs left on your head. So if you're ready to take action to prevent hair loss, go to keeps.com/stuffmadehere or click on the link in the description to get 50% off your first order. That's keeps.com/stuffmadehere. I call this bat the slot machine. Every time you swing it, you have the chance of getting a massive payday. And that's because if you hit it in just the right spot, it will unleash a chemical reaction, which will send the ball flying way faster than you could possibly hit it by hand. And chemical reaction is just a fancy way of saying there's an explosion. They talk about bats having a sweet spot. They're nothing compared to this. This is the sweetest of sweet spots. It's like the holy of holies. If you hit this, it's crazy. Whoa. It's powered by up to 3 .27 caliber blanks. There are so many ways this thing can explode, destroy itself, destroy me. It's so powerful, it can punch a hole in a ball. This project has been simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. It's also the premier home defense bat, so we'll be trying that out as well. I've been wanting to make this bat for a long time, but it's big and has some complicated woodwork. I've been doing a lot of machining on my metal CNC, but it's really painful and makes a huge mess. So a few months ago,
now
I
I
started
really
saying to
regret
myself, I need a CNC router.
doing these
And my wife was all
scribbles
like,
on
don't you
the
already
horn
have 3
layer instead
mills?
of the
How
hair
many do you need?
layer.
I told her, that's easy. I just need 1 more. And she said, that's what you said last time. Also, can it even fit down here? And I said, how big could it be? Then I said, hey, Tormach, do you want to work together? And they said, yes. So long story short, a Tormach 24R just showed up in my driveway, and there's no way it's going to fit through my shop door. But like a wolf with its back to the wall, I'm not going down without a fight.
You can kiss that crate
Actually,
goodbye.
maybe
I
now
also
looks
partially
better
disassembled the
back
mill.
like that.
The real challenge now is getting it through this obstacle course to my shop, but you'd be amazed what a man, a chain hoist, a pallet jack, and some sheer determination can accomplish.
Uh-oh, that's not what I want. Oh, I selected hair front instead of front horn.
Every time I take something down the hill, it's incredibly painful, and I say, I'm never gonna do that again, but it doesn't matter. How many more big tools could I possibly get? And then I let just enough time pass to forget how terrible it was, and then I get another one. This was so much easier to set up than my 1100 MX. The hardest part was getting it off the pallet. There doesn't seem to be a good lift point, so I'm doing the recommended 4x4 Jenga challenge. I'm mounting the computer and the instructions say, do not use the front mount. There's a risk of entrapment and death. Use the side mount. The mount they say not to use is nicer, but is a little bit of convenience worth the risk of entrapment and potential death? Having made many CNC machines, I really appreciate just plugging everything in and it working. This is the chiller, so this cools the spindle. It produces a whole lot of heat when it's cutting, and this pumps water through it. If you don't pump the water, it will burn the spindle up. This is a gigantic vacuum pump. It uses way more power than the mill itself. When you're cutting sheets, it vacuums them down onto the table so you don't have to use clamps. I wish there was more to show, but that's it. It's done. At first I was thinking 2 foot by 4 foot, how big could that be? This thing is huge. You can fit so much into this. As an engineer, I love getting machinery because I can check it out and see how they designed everything. Ooh, THK ball screws. If you have to ask how much they cost, you can't afford them. I wonder what these mounting points are for on the table. Maybe a rotary table or a tool changer? I really like this vacuum table design with 3 zones, although there aren't valves for each zone, so I'm going to have to make plugs, but should be really handy. It has a tool height setter, which is extremely useful. If you have a mill or a router and don't have one of these, get one. So you're probably still wondering how this is different from my other 3 mills, but I would say just look at it. It's obviously different. But if you can't just tell by the way it is, the biggest difference is that it has this luxuriously huge build area. It's 48 by 24 inches. It has good built-in dust collection. The spindle is way faster. It goes up to 24,000 RPMs. The table itself is a huge vacuum, and so you can set a piece of wood on here and it'll suck it down. It's really optimized for large pieces of flattish, soft stuff. So with this thing, I should be able to punch out big, awesome things quickly. Maybe a full-size version of this backboard in the future. Want to see a magic trick? Where'd the 2x4 go? All right, it's broken in. Let's make some real stuff. For its first real project, this router is going to be making a very special baseball bat from scratch, and you might be saying to yourself, bats aren't made from pressure-treated pine, but that's where you'd be wrong. I Googled until I found someone who said that bats used to be made out of pine. This confirmed my worldview. Speaking of conspiracies, I'm pretty sure I know what my next project is. Imagine a device that you could place by the door of a store, and when you try to walk in without wearing a mask, it forcibly shoots one onto your face and has a high risk of shooting an eye out. But it's going to be fun. So if that sounds cool, you should subscribe and follow along. Also, if you want to support these very important projects, you should check out my Patreon. The coolest thing is the Discord. I'm very active on it. I've got all kinds of great ideas from the folks on there. Weren't we talking about a bat? Let's get back to that. This bat is designed to use the rounds that go into powder-actuated nailers. They use an explosive blank to drive nails into concrete and steel. Mine takes a 22 caliber blank, but they make a more powerful version for the largest nails into the hardest materials. They use 27 caliber blanks, which is what I'm using, of course. For the amount of energy in these things, they are tiny. And the idea is to build a baseball bat that will harness as much of the energy in these as possible to give your swing a big kick. My calculations suggest that it may be possible to beat the home run distance record with 3 blanks. So that's what I'm targeting. So the basic idea is to make a bat with a cylinder that can shoot in and out of it. Then if a ball hits right at the cylinder, I can launch it out really fast, and that'll send the ball flying, faster than I would get it to fly if I just hit with the bat. The way I plan to make the piston move is with a small explosive charge. When the ball hits it, this charge fires. And if this area down here is sealed, the expanding gases from firing this charge will force the piston out because it's the only thing that can give. After protracted hemming and hawing, I settled on a design where the blanks sit in the bottom of a tube and the piston has little pins on it that fire them. The pins are hitting the edge of the shell because they're a rim fire. That means if you crush the edge of the shell, that will set it off. It's like they say, you can't try it till you make it. So let's get this thing done.
I should.
Getting this made used pretty much every fabrication technology that I have. A lot of my time was spent machining because these parts are really heavy duty. This is honing the bore so that I get a nice good seal. I have the manual mill because it's so much easier for stuff like these firing pins and the piston. The bat is machined out of a solid 4x4. There's a lot of material to remove. And the surface finish is fantastic. I didn't need to sand or anything. To design this mechanism, I needed to know if it was going to explode or not from the pressure of the shells detonating inside of it. And depending on how I ran the numbers, I can make it look like this thing was totally fine, or that it was guaranteed to explode.
Before it was like front horn.
So what I'm going to do is test it experimentally. I built a test stand that'll let me fire off rounds from the safety of cover, and we can see if there's any kind of distortion or anything like that. All right, 3, 2, 1. What? That doesn't make any sense. Let's try again. Again. It looks like I'm losing most of the pressure through a tiny gap in the shell carrier, so I'm going to remake the parts to have proper seals. All right, who'd want this piece of crap? This is what you want. Real seals. All right, let's try again. That is much more like it. All those tests were with 1 out of 3 shells, so let's try 2 now. That was much more violent than I was expecting. Whoa, it totally broke my tester. That's a steel rod. And look at the extrusion. It whacked the ball so hard, it bent the extrusion back on itself. This is really making me scared to use this bat. All right, I'm gonna try a single cartridge load. I've tested it a lot and it seems very safe. Whoa, so much power. This testing is looking good. Let's try 2 shells. What? So upon closer inspection, it would seem I broke everything. Somehow even the firing pins fell out, and they were a press fit. The force of stopping the piston destroyed the stop bar and ripped the firing mechanism out of the bat. There should also not be a gap here. It almost ripped out the screws that secure the shell carrier. That would have been bad. I think my results in the bat were so much different than the test stand.
I'm about to do the same thing I did before.
The entire assembly could
hated myself for doing,
which spread the impulse out. And in the bat, all I could do is rip itself out. All right, let's redesign and remake everything. I redesigned the firing mechanism, and I made a whole new bat to hold it, and this will hopefully fix the bat exploding problem. The big changes are that it now has these urethane rods, which are very stiff springs. So when this piston shoots out, it will hit this rod, which will have to compress these springs before it can slam into the steel. Before, the rod was totally rigid, and when this cylinder would shoot out, it would just stop, and all that energy has to go somewhere. I made this whole mechanism floating inside the bat, so as those springs compress, the whole mechanism can come out. There's a 1/4-inch plate that holds the shell carrier in, so shouldn't be going anywhere. I'm hitting off a tee because I don't have anyone to pitch to me. I told my wife I'd buy her a full set of body armor, which would be awesome, but no dice. It makes sense though. If the piston got loose, it'd be going straight for her. If the ball hits the corner of this piston, it could go flying off at an angle. And you would think that has even
now I have the dilemma of what I'm doing with this back
but
corner
my experience has taught me that
if
there's a 99%
it,
chance it's going to go straight
in
my face.
If I want it on top here?
So I have this full face mask shield, and I also added this polycarbonate face shield because there's also a chance the bat will explode, and I don't want wood or metal going into my eyes. This is what someone who really stinks at baseball looks like when they have no technological help. But when you hit the sweet spot...
It needs to be like this, because the horns are like above my eyes, and they're not on the side of the head. They're like on the forehead almost.
So it looks like I'm getting around 350 feet with 2 rounds, and every ball I hit was a home run except for one. There's one that I kind of shanked. It seems like it just launches the ball so well. I really wonder if I could beat the home run record with 3 shells. I don't think I was hitting it perfectly. I wouldn't be surprised if I could get up to maybe around 400 feet with the perfect swing with 2 shells. So it seems possible I could get in the 500 foot range with 3 shells. Let me know if you'd be interested in a redesign that can handle 3 shells going for the record.
Put it up higher.
Bats are popular for home defense, so I'm wondering
smaller.
how this bat would do against an intruder or a zombie or something like that. So I've got a surrogate for an intruder with a very small, fleshy, messed up head, and we're gonna see how it does against the bat. Our home intruder is teed up, and I'm gonna give him a whack on the back of the head, see how he fares. Note that we're not in my house, so this is not strictly legal if it were a home intruder. Whoa. Let's see how he fared. You alive? I think it just removed his lower jaw. This might be survivable. All right, one more just for fun. You alive? Yeah, I don't think so. There's one last big question, which is how will this thing do with 3 rounds in it? Let's fix the test stand and find out. This whole structure is pretty rickety. It's just to keep the ball from flying super fast into anything. If it falls apart, it doesn't matter. I'm protected behind a huge pallet and a sheet of plywood, so I'm good. And if this falls over, it's okay. 3, 2, 1. Oh my God. It whacked the ball so hard it put a hole in it. That's incredible. So other than totally obliterating the O-ring, this mostly survived. I'm not sure a bat would survive with this in it, given how high the mechanism leapt into the air. I think it would break the bat like it did before.
I like that.
I'm super excited to have this 24R. It's gonna really level up my capabilities and let me make some things that have been in my list for a long time. Let me know if you think I should make a V2 going for the record. And one last thing, whatever you do, do not try to recreate what I did here. It is very dangerous. There's a lot of precautions and calculations on the back end that kept me safe. There's a lot of ways you can get hurt or even die doing this. Other than that, thanks for watching. So I look very silly in this machine, and the reason I'm in here is that the longer I go without cutting my hair, the younger I look. If you base my age on the YouTube comments on my videos, I'm somewhere between a 14 and 16-year-old boy. And the other thing that people are saying is that I look like the reference model for the Lego minifig. I'm not really seeing the resemblance, but it's time to cut my hair. I would rather not have someone cut my hair who's touching 100 other people's heads all day long. So I built this robot, and
let's go back to music.
It's gonna cut my hair
while I finish up this last little bit of the drawing.
Trimmers or any easy mode like that. And I think it works, so I don't know because I still have all my hair. I haven't tested it yet. And I'm a little bit worried because the initial trials with the dummy didn't go totally smoothly, but I
and then we'll go raid off to somebody. Give this a save. Okay. Let us see who is online for us to go raid today. is live. Got a Preston McDog is playing Muse Dash. Spicy is playing Resident Evil 7. Steez is playing Star Wars. Battlefront 2. Almondal is doing Just Chatting. Mackenzie is playing Killer Instinct. Sal King is doing Yu-Gi-Oh! Yuma is doing a Minecraft charity stream. Heavens to Betsy is playing Batman. Johnny is playing Warhammer. Does anybody have any preferences? Raina? I don't think I know who Raina is. I'm not following anyone named Raina. But if we want to go to a charity stream, we can raid Yuma. Yuma Yamano is doing a charity stream. But we did raid Yuma pretty recently. Who's someone we've never raided before? We've never raided Sal Kang. We've never raided Teeny. We've never raided Steez or Amandal, but Amandal's having like a pretty adult conversation. I'm not sure that's quite where we want to all go. You know what? We've been in Discord with Sal King a couple times so far, so let's go raid her. Let's go raid Sal. And she's playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Where is that raid button? Here it is. What do you spell her name? Sal. K-A-N-G. Alright, everybody. As always, thank you so much for coming to this stream today. It was pretty fun. I enjoyed that. We got my head done, so we gotta do my body, and then we can start on my friends' heads. But thank you, everybody who rated and followed. And subscribed and chatted and worked. I appreciate you all very, very much. If you are subscribed or you would like to use your channel points to unlock the emote, if you would copy that message for me, please, I'd appreciate it. If you don't have my emotes, go ahead and copy that one. But like I said, it's very, very cheap to unlock my emotes with your channel points if you want to. I will be live again next Wednesday. I'm not sure what my plan is for next Wednesday yet. It's probably going to be Okami. But I will make up a schedule and post it on my Discord and Twitter. You can join the Discord if you'd like and get a notification when I go live. But keep an eye on there and my Twitter for a going live notification and my schedule. And I'll see you all next time. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Am I winning? No, I'm never winning. We've already established I'm